Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
We are tracking Hurricane Katrina as it is about to make landfall here in the next hour or so. Surf kicking up, rain picking up. We'll go live to Palm Beach, Florida in a moment.
Meanwhile, Katrina causes a huge rush at the Fort Lauderdale airport. Tourists are trying to get out before Katrina comes in.
Live from the Weather Channel, this is Afternoon Outlook.
Welcome to this special edition of Afternoon Outlook. I'm Jeff Morrow.
And I'm Vivian Brown. Katrina now. Hurricane Katrina. It's causing a huge rush, of course, at the airport. Tourists are definitely trying to get out before it comes on in. I'll tell you what, we've had major problems in the area because of the preceding rain bands with it. You could see that the eye of the storm is just getting ready to come on shore, and we are so on top of this, and so is the Hurricane Center, because yesterday at this time, we said that this system would become a minimal hurricane right before making landfall, and that is definitely coming to fruition as we speak. You could see the western part of the eye wall just getting ready to come on shore.
Now this graphic says Tropical Storm Katrina. The advisory just came out. It is now Hurricane Katrina, and the winds are now up to 75 miles an hour. Here is the projected path. Again, we think it will continue on this westerly jog and probably cross over the south central parts of Florida, and then eventually re-emerge as it heads out into the Gulf of Mexico and maybe start to make more of a right-hand turn as we head into late in the weekend or early next week. But the immediate concern is the landfall of Katrina as it comes on shore here very close to Fort Lauderdale.
That's right, and we have live crews, of course. We have our very own storm tracker, Jim Cantori. He's in the Fort Lauderdale area. We have Mike Bettis, who is standing by, and Mike is reporting from the Palm Beach area. And of course, we have our expert, hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, right here live in the studio. Let's go first to Mike Bettis. And Mike, oh yeah, you're already feeling the effects from Katrina.
Yeah, obviously the winds have really picked up here, Vivian, and these are the strongest winds we've seen since we've been here. I have my handheld anemometer with me, and we've been measuring winds sustained between 35 and 40 miles an hour. We actually just about 5 minutes ago measured a wind gust at 55.
All right, we've lost the video portion there because of the strong winds, probably blowing the satellite dish. Let's go back to Mike. I think we might have him again. Mike?
Yeah, Jeff, that's going to happen. We get these strong wind gusts that come through. It may knock our signal off, so we'll stay with you as long as we can. Obviously, we're on the northern side of this storm, so we're anticipating getting the strongest of the storm being on the northern side with those winds coming in perpendicular to the land. I want to mention that we did measure a wind gust at 55 miles an hour about 5 minutes ago, and the winds seem to be increasing in intensity here as we just even stand here over the past couple of minutes. Certainly something that we're going to watch for with the winds that are like this, some sporadic power outages. You may see a tree here or there that is down, or a power pole here or there is down. We are not expecting widespread power outages from this storm because we don't anticipate the winds extending out from the storm all that far, so that is good news. And obviously, we're going to be watching for some rain. Heavier rain bands will be accompanying the winds as this storm comes on shore. It is a hurricane now with sustained winds around the center of circulation at 75 miles per hour. Certainly it has gotten very, very nasty here in the past hour or so. We could stand without a problem at just about 2:30 this afternoon. The Palm Beach International Airport, the last flight out, is supposed to be at 5 o'clock, and we do not anticipate any flights after that at all. The airlines are canceling their flights after that time. Check ahead with your air carrier or check online to rearrange for a flight sometime late tomorrow. That's when we anticipate the airport reopening. Haven't had any signs of flooding, but certainly Vivian and Jeff, rough with the wind right now. And this is probably what our conditions will be like for the next several hours until the eastern side of the storm passes by us.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Bettis, of course, in Palm Beach, Florida, as Katrina comes on shore.
Let's go a little bit farther down the coast to storm tracker Jim Cantori. And Jim, yeah, you look like you're in the bullseye here as the center of the circulation headed right toward the north side of Fort Lauderdale.
Well, right now, Jeff, as is usually the case here, we're getting sandblasted. Talking about winds just kind of whipping down the beach here. You can see we are in Fort Lauderdale, and along the beaches, actually quite a few folks out here, believe it or not. A lot of surfers have been out enjoying a little bit of a ride here. Nice long shore current. So when they do get out there in this water, they're being taken down. But you can see the wave action. What a difference from what I left this morning in Miami Beach. I mean, literally 50 miles down to my south. The water was almost flat, and now you come in here, some of these waves breaking on shore as high as 8 feet. We have gusted probably in the tune of about 50 miles an hour from time to time. That blows a few things around and blows it at you. And what they're planning on doing here at Fort Lauderdale is shutting down the airport at about 7 p.m. tonight. They may do so earlier, given the fact that some of the worst of this stuff is coming right on in. Let's talk about what's been happening in and around Fort Lauderdale today. You can certainly see that people are just basically getting ready in Broward County. They did that yesterday. Shut down the schools, asked for the voluntary evacuations. And remember, the big thing with this storm is, especially for Dade, Miami-Dade, Broward County, the worst is not happening yet, okay? It's going to be when the rain comes in, that heavy rain, and that's going to be tonight. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you very much. That was Jim Cantori.
Stay with us. Our expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, joins us next with more.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Okay, it is time now for our weather picture of the day. It comes from Coconut Creek, Florida. It's a shot of last night's sunset as the region was watching for a tropical storm, now Hurricane Katrina. Now, you can share your weather picture by going to weather.com and clicking on Daily Weather Picture for details. Hello and welcome back. Of course, our top story is Hurricane Katrina.
Let's update you on the latest watches and warnings associated with this hurricane as it's coming in. Again, hurricane warnings up between Vero Beach and Florida City. It looks like the center of this hurricane will probably come on shore very close to the north side of Fort Lauderdale. Right now, there are also tropical storm warnings for the northwest Bahamas and then tropical storm watches north of Vero Beach to Titusville and along parts of the southwest coast of Florida and out into the Keys as far west as the 7 Mile Bridge.
And with that said, let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons.
And Steve, as this system is now starting to come on shore, where are the strongest winds going to be and what are going to be the impacts from those winds?
Well, Jeff, we typically expect the strongest winds to be in what we call the eye wall. This has a relatively poor eye wall, but in that eye wall, where the thunderstorms are the strongest. And so on the north side, here's the eye wall and these strong thunderstorms right in here. And right there is Pompano Beach, and we just had a report of a wind gust of 60 miles per hour at Pompano Beach. It's probably going to increase a little bit as that band comes on shore. The strongest winds are probably back in this very heavy rain band right in here, and that's going to come on shore in probably about an hour or so, and that'll be probably in the Fort Lauderdale, northern Fort Lauderdale area. Very heavy rain coming into Miami now, and that's going to continue over the next few hours. Now, what's going to happen wind-wise? Well, we don't expect the wind to be strong enough to do any significant damage. Some minor signs may blow down if you have a for sale sign out in your lawn or something like that. But the primary thing is the potential for power outages. Power outages we can expect to be likely in this area along the coast with those hurricane force winds, but it's not going to be widespread, we don't think. And then in this area, as the circulation moves inland, we could have some power outages as well, but those would be more sporadic and isolated circulations that would be associated with those power outages. Now keep in mind the surge right along the impact area where the wind is coming onshore will probably be about 3 to 5 feet, and that accompanied by wave action that's going to be about 10 to 15 feet or so, maybe a little bit larger, but not much larger. The circulation is very small. The real threat in this situation is the rainfall flooding over the next 24 to 36 hours. We expect that to be the greatest from Lake Okeechobee southward over the next 24 hours. Jeff, Vivian?
Thank you very much, Dr. Lyons. And of course, Dr. Lyons will be back at about 10 before the hour into the tropical update.
And we'll continue to hear from storm tracker Jim Cantori and meteorologist Mike Bettis from live reports throughout the night from coastal Florida.
Meanwhile, voluntary evacuations are underway for the Barrier Islands and mobile home parks in Broward County. 12 Red Cross shelters opened earlier this afternoon.
We'll be back with how Katrina will impact your weather over the next 7 days right after Danny Lipford shows you how to repair rain-damaged wood. Stay with us.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo coastal restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Well, Atlanta, you broke a record, but not one that many may be very happy about. You now have a new record for consecutive hot and muggy summer nights. Your overnight low has not been below 70 degrees for the past 48 days. A lot of air conditioners working overtime the last 48 days. And you can keep adding to that record tonight in hot and muggy Atlanta.
That's right. Dallas and Houston, you too have been pretty hot. When will we get a break over the Deep South?
And of course, one of the biggest questions is, how will Katrina impact the weather in the Southeast over the next 7 days?
Oh yeah, big questions. Let's get the answers in the weekly planner. Here's tomorrow morning, of course, Katrina crossing over the southern peninsula of Florida. So all eyes will be focused on Katrina. Of course, as it makes landfall over the next several hours, it should be downgraded back to a tropical storm, has just become a minimal hurricane before actually the whole eye wall moves inland. So we'll watch it closely. The biggest threat will be the locally heavy rain over southern Florida. Flooding, again, a huge concern. So we'll watch the central southern peninsula of Florida. And then actually Katrina very well could re-emerge back over open waters in the eastern Gulf and going through the weekend all along the eastern and the central Gulf coastal regions. You need to be wary. Otherwise, we're watching scattered showers and thunderstorms across the mid-Mississippi Valley and the Central Plains for your Friday. But as you go west of the Rockies, things dry out. Plenty of sunshine we're expecting from the Great Basin to the Great Salt Lake City area, all the way to the Pacific Northwest. Now on Saturday, still dry for the northern Rockies and much of the Pacific Northwest. An isolated thunderstorm over the southwest, and of course near that frontal boundary, we'll continue to focus our attention for scattered showers and storms, but the main focus will be on Katrina as it re-emerges back over open waters going through the weekend now. Sometime maybe the wee hours of the morning on Monday, we could be talking about landfall again somewhere here, the central and eastern Gulf Coast. So here's a look at Monday's weather picture. Scattered showers and storms, locally heavy with Katrina. Scattered showers and thunderstorms elsewhere on Monday in the Pacific Northwest. All of this rain moves into the northern Rockies on Tuesday, and here's a look at Wednesday's overall precipitation forecast. Now, let's talk temperatures. Will it get any cooler over the Deep South? Well, I don't think so. Not near the Red River of Texas and Oklahoma, with Dallas well into the triple digits tomorrow. That'll be the case on Saturday. Maybe a little less hot. We're talking 90s, but still, it feels like summer over most of the South. Now, the cooler air coming into the Pacific Northwest as we work our way through the weekend, Monday and Tuesday, even Wednesday, is still rather coolish over the Pacific Northwest and the high plains.
Our coverage of Katrina continues. Many schools in South Florida will be closed right through tomorrow. Many schools also being used as shelters.
Now here are some things you should do to get ready. Secure those boats, gas up your cars, get extra cash from the ATM, and you want to keep it tuned right here for the latest progress on newly formed Hurricane Katrina.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo coastal restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Well, they've been gassing up in South Florida. Tourists filled the car for the drive north. Residents are making sure they're fueled in case the power goes out for a few days. They won't have to worry about not being able to refuel.
And you know, the lines are pretty long at the grocery stores too. Bottled water, non-perishable foods, and batteries are top sellers as everyone gets ready for Katrina. Hello and welcome back to our coverage of Hurricane Katrina.
Katrina is already bringing rain to parts of South Florida. In fact, the center of this circulation, folks, is very nearly onshore. It is just offshore there of North Fort Lauderdale, and it looks like that's probably where it's going to come in, somewhere between Lauderdale and Pompano Beach, south of Boca Raton there, and that circulation will continue to come inland. So we'll continue to monitor that as we head through the next couple of hours.
That's right, and our live coverage of Katrina continues with a live shot from Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach in Florida.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
The beaches of South Florida have been preparing for Katrina. People are packing up and stocking up and gearing up for the 11th named storm, now a hurricane, of this busy tropical season.
And we thank you for keeping it tuned to Afternoon Outlook. We continue to track Hurricane Katrina. It slowed down and appears to be strengthening.
Yeah, of course, the biggest threat from Katrina, the huge amount of rain that will bring to an already saturated South Florida. Now, here is the very latest close-up of the radar here. There you can see it moving right in toward the Fort Lauderdale area. That's where the center of circulation is. We've already had winds. We've annotated them on the left-hand side there of up to 64 miles an hour along the coast. So again, particularly when that area of darker red and orange starts to come on shore that is still offshore of Fort Lauderdale, that's when we may have winds up to hurricane force.
That's right, a very, very intense system coming on shore as we speak. And of course, we have live coverage from across the Florida Peninsula throughout the night. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, is here, and he'll give us an official tropical update in about 20 minutes.
And we'll also talk about the tornado threat from Katrina in just a few minutes with Dr. Greg Forbes.
Now, Katrina definitely impacting travel at this hour. Let's bring in our very own Mike Bettis. He's in the Palm Beach area, and he joins us now with the latest. Already starting to feel some of those pretty strong winds, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually measured here at our location a wind gust at 55 miles an hour. We've had winds steady right around 40 miles an hour. Makes it a little bit tough to stand, that's for sure. And as you're mentioning, Vivian, that's going to have some impact on some travel, that's for sure. I want to first show you a Sky Tracker radar, and we've got some areas, especially on the north side, where we're going to be encountering some heavier bands of rain. We're also going to have that on the south side as well. So as this thing makes landfall, the wind and the rain, potentially heavy rain, that's going to cause some low-lying flooding, and a lot of roadways we expect will be water covered. So something we're definitely following. This is now a hurricane, winds up to 75 miles an hour. We're definitely feeling that. We did not feel these winds just a couple of hours ago. It was breezy, maybe 15 or so, but now they've really, really ramped up as far as travel goes. I want to give you some information on the Palm Beach International Airport. Last flights leaving out as of 5 o'clock, so the airlines are not bringing in or sending out any flights after 5 o'clock. You are encouraged not to go to the airport at this point to try to change flights. The terminals will not service you in that manner. What you need to do is call your air carrier on their phone numbers, on their hotline numbers, or rearrange your flights online and try to get a flight out that may be sometime later tomorrow. Obviously, when we have winds like this, you cannot let an airplane come in or take off. It's just too dangerous for them to be on the runways. But obviously, Vivian and Jeff, the conditions here in West Palm Beach have gotten much, much worse now that Katrina is making landfall. Back to you in the Weather Channel studios.
All right, thank you very much. That was Mike Bettis. He's up near Palm Beach.
Okay, let's go a little farther south along the coast to Fort Lauderdale, and that's where our storm tracker, he's definitely tracking Hurricane Katrina, and he joins us now with the latest. Jim.
Hey, Viv, it's pretty nasty out here. I got to be honest with you. We haven't had a tremendous amount of heavy rain, but you can see behind me here. Look at the ocean, just incredibly frothed up here. I mean, I'm just amazed at the 50-mile drive that we took out of South Beach this morning up here, and to come out and just see this ocean like this. Earlier, surfers, I mean, there must have been 50 to 75 surfers out here. I'm not kidding you. And now there is just nobody out here. You can see how different the water is. Instead of having the nice swell come rolling in, we've just got a totally chopped up sea here. We had a couple of bands that came in with swirling winds as opposed to kind of steady gusting winds, and that's the kind of wind we've been dealing with. Right now, some of the sustained winds anywhere from 35 to 45 miles an hour. Pompano Beach to my north, about 7 miles, gusting to about 60 miles an hour. And we are, as I mentioned, pretty rain-free here. But just to my east is that very tiny, tiny little eye wall that we are going to deal with here over the next couple of hours. Don't expect us to be in the clear. Don't expect us to have calm winds. It is just going to get really ugly here. And of course, on the east side, we have all that heavy rain to deal with. Fort Lauderdale, don't be surprised to see some sporadic power outages. The airport will be closed as of 7. I was just watching the TV inside, and they are taking off planes. Probably the last couple of flights to get out of here before some of the worst conditions that we're going to deal with here. Boy, I'll tell you, for a minimal hurricane, Katrina definitely packing a punch. We'll keep you posted here from Fort Lauderdale. Back to you guys.
All right, Jim, before you go, I was going to ask Jim just a quick question. Do we still have him? All right, Jim, before we let you go, do you think there will be any beach erosion there, or anybody concerned about losing some of that beach?
You know, Jeff, it's kind of interesting. Instead of having these huge waves coming in and just crashing and cutting at the beach, they're kind of breaking offshore far enough and just kind of rolling up on the beach. You know, you get this big push of water coming up on the beach. So right now, at least from what we see, of course the water's up a little bit, Jeff. It does not appear that we're going to deal with a tremendous amount of beach erosion. But of course tomorrow, that may be a whole different story. I'll let you know.
All right, thank you very much. That was Jim Cantor reporting there from Fort Lauderdale. We have a radar that we can show you actually of exactly where Katrina is. Again, Jim in Fort Lauderdale is just on the left-hand side of where that center of circulation is starting to come inland now. The center is probably still about 30, maybe 30, 35 miles offshore, so it won't be long before he starts getting the worst of it.
And with that western eye wall coming on shore with many tropical systems, you talk about the threat of tornadoes. So we'll shift gears and bring in our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes, next.
Right now, we'll look at what you should do to get ready at your home when a hurricane threatens. We'll be right back.
This program was brought to you by Subaru, a world leader in all-wheel drive technology. Think, feel, drive. Subaru.
Hello and welcome back to our coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Now, we've been telling you that Katrina will bring a lot of rain to South Florida.
But with any tropical storm or hurricane, there is also a threat of tornadoes as the system makes landfall. To talk more about the threat of tornadoes as Katrina comes inland, we bring in our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes. And Greg, what do you think Katrina might bring us?
Well, Jeff, so far we've been pretty lucky. Usually the worst tornado threat is in bands just ahead of the center as it comes onshore, and we haven't had very many of those, so the tornado threat has been low so far. Getting one of those bands right now, Boynton Beach, but it's an inner band. The outer bands have been pretty weak, so that's going to hold the tornado threat down, but a very large band behind the center here could have some tornado threat. It would be a little bit unusual. We are getting strong gusty winds, 59, 60, 64 mile per hour in the area north and south of Fort Lauderdale as the center of the eye wall comes onshore. So strong wind gusts are coming on. Can't rule out a tornado. Let's take a look. Last year we had quite a lot of tornadoes. We'll switch sources here. Last year there were 74 tornadoes from tropical systems that came into Florida, and over 300 in the country as a whole, even from additional hurricanes that we aren't showing here. This one should be less than that. Here we'll keep an eye out for heavy rain. There could be a foot of rain by tomorrow evening in some places, as well as isolated damaging wind gusts and tornadoes. We have another location, though, that will have that possibility of flooding rain. It's in Kansas. We've seen a tremendous amount of rain, in fact, up to 9 inches of rain out there. El Dorado, Kansas, just east of Wichita. A lot of flooding, cars flooded. Apartments had to be evacuated. Even some livestock were reported drowned in this massive rain event. And if we go back to the weather map, then we'll see that that area could still have the possibility of additional heavy rain as well as some severe weather in this red shaded area. So 2 places in the central and Florida regions where we're keeping very close eyes on this evening. Jeff?
All right, thank you very much. That was Dr. Greg Forbes. He'll keep us updated on the severe weather threat, of course, as Katrina moves inland. And I just saw, Vivian, that we not only have 1, we now have 2 severe thunderstorm watches out there in the plains.
Okay, well, let's show you the very latest because we are watching another system move across the high plains. You can see that frontal boundary as it moves into the Dakotas. And we've had quite a bit of low-level moisture and warm air preceding it. So we are watching the middle of the country as well as Katrina, but we want you to know here here in parts of Kansas. We are dealing with a threat of severe weather, and also here over the front range of the Rockies, over northeastern Colorado, western Nebraska, and extreme western Kansas, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch. Again, this is the first one. This is the most recent watch issued, which does include a good part of eastern South Dakota. So we're watching this whole area very, very closely. Back to the national picture. Let's kind of zoom in on this area where we've had some heavier storms to move into the eastern parts of Kansas and crossing over into the St. Louis area. So that the storms here, we could find some small hailstones as well as the possibility of gusty winds just south of Topeka, again crossing over into west central Missouri. So all eyes are focused on the middle of the country as well as watching Hurricane Katrina. Let's show you not only the radar, but I wanted to show you the satellite picture too, because where we don't have storms and we don't have clouds, we have a fair amount of sunshine and a pretty decent day for the far west coast from Seattle down to San Francisco, and a beautiful day we're having over the northeast in New England. Take a look, 71 degrees in Boston with partly cloudy skies. You know that is fabulous. 81 in New York City, not too bad. Again, but the heat is on down toward Dallas. Oh, look at the heat index, 105.
Well, Dr. Steve Lyons joins us next for more on Katrina and the impacts of that system on South Florida.
Right now, though, P. Allen Smith tells us more about adding some calm to your garden.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
And our coverage of Katrina continues. Now, South Florida, officially, we've had reports near the Boca Raton area of winds in excess of 60 miles an hour.
That's right. Let's turn it over to our expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, this is a rather smallish in size hurricane. How far out from the center will the winds from Katrina really have an effect?
Well, it depends on what we talk about relative to effect, but basically the stronger winds are about 45 miles across, which is basically in between Miami and Vero Beach for sure, and it's basically right in this core. We can get a little better picture of that if we look at the radar imagery. And the radar you can see spinning around, it's this little core in here. That's where the stronger winds are, and that's where we expect the potential for power outages. But you can see the overall circulation is far larger than that, even though the winds are only about 20 miles per hour way down in the Keys and farther to the north. That circulation is containing a lot of moisture and a lot of rain, and that's the big threat over the next 24 hours as it moves inland to Florida, the rainfall flooding potential. And we're going to see that continue. Some of the strongest rain was right in that band you saw right there. And now we're looking at the potential for the power outages in that little small 45 mile wide area right there in southeast Florida, weakening as it comes inland. And that's going to continue about the next 6 or 8 hours and then weaken rather dramatically, and then be crossing Florida into the Gulf of Mexico, we think. There's a circulation there, rather small circulation relative to tropical cyclones, especially a hurricane. We have some showers over the northern Caribbean islands. They're not going to cause any problems tonight. We're still monitoring a vigorous low pressure center out here in the Atlantic. It's far from land, but it still has a chance to become a tropical depression or tropical storm. The winds on the north side are up around 40 miles per hour right now. Now we have a new tropical depression in the eastern Pacific. It's this circulation here, Tropical Depression 9E. It's going to be moving off to the west at about 12 away from Mexico. So if you're heading down to the Riviera, nothing to worry about there. Nothing but fair weather and a few isolated thunderstorms, a little hotter than normal, however. In the meantime, a strong typhoon is ransacking Tokyo Harbor as we speak. Let's get back to Jeff and Vivian.
Thank you, Dr. Lyon. And speaking of Tokyo, we will take you overseas and talk about the typhoon next.
Tokyo is feeling the effects of Typhoon Mawar. We'll have more on the tropical activity in the Western Pacific coming up in just a moment.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Now, it's not only a busy tropical season here in the States, but it's been an intense typhoon season in the Western Pacific.
Tokyo is feeling the impacts of Typhoon Mawar.
The rough seas are battering the shores. Tokyo can expect 89-mile-an-hour winds. Heavy rain and wind has halted some of the flights of Japanese airlines. Japan was struck by a record 10 typhoons and tropical storms last season.
All right, here's the satellite picture. You can see that the center of Mawar is just kind of raking the south coast of Japan right there. What is the forecast? Well, in China, we still have some thunderstorms to talk about just about everywhere. Now let's go over to Japan here and talk about, again, Tokyo feeling the effects right now. Still could be some rain in the forecast as we head on into the day Friday.
And still ahead on Afternoon Outlook, we continue our coverage of Hurricane Katrina with live reports from Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach, Florida.
The rush is on at South Florida airports. Tourists, hopefully you've been able now to get out of the path of Katrina. We'll have much more as this hurricane comes on shore.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
The Weather Channel, bringing weather to life.
And we continue to track Hurricane Katrina. The surf definitely kicking up, the rain picking up. This hurricane now starting to make landfall. We'll go live to Palm Beach in just a moment.
And of course, it's causing a huge rush at the Fort Lauderdale airport. Tourists are trying to get out before Katrina comes in.
Live from the Weather Channel, this is Afternoon Outlook.
After last year, this is what nobody wants to hear. Another landfalling hurricane in Florida. Welcome to Afternoon Outlook. I'm Jeff Morrow.
And I'm Vivian Brown. Hurricane Katrina, now a Category 1 hurricane, so it is a minimal hurricane, but it's already impacting South Florida at this hour. You can see the western eye wall of the hurricane is just getting ready to move onshore just north there, as you can see, of Miami. And we'll continue to watch this because it does have 75-mile-an-hour winds. We've already had official reports of 65 miles an hour. The wind reported at Boca Raton, Florida.
All right, there is the latest from the Hurricane Center. Again, 75 miles an hour, making it a minimal Category 1, pressure 990 millibars. The question is, after it comes on shore, brings the wind and the rain to South Florida, where does it go from there? It looks like it wants to reemerge out into the Gulf of Mexico and maybe turn more toward the north. We'll have more on that with our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons.
And we are tracking Katrina from the Florida coast. We also have expert analysis, of course, in the studio. Hurricane expert Dr. Steve Lyons joins us more at 10 after the hour.
Jim Cantori right now is live near Fort Lauderdale, and Mike Bettis is live in Palm Beach. Let's start with Mike.
Mike, already you're feeling the effects of strong winds from Hurricane Katrina.
Absolutely, Vivian and Jeff. You know, we're on the northern side of this storm. We anticipate some of the strongest winds to be on the northern edge of Katrina. Where we are is Palm Beach, which is a little bit north of Fort Lauderdale and Boca Raton. And we've been watching through the day some of the waves really increase in size. I'm going to take you out here toward the wall and down toward the beach, and you can see we had breakers earlier that were anywhere from 4 to 6, then 6 to 8, then 8 to 10. They're now breaking at about 10 plus, and probably the height of the waves that we'll see. And we haven't seen a whole lot of beach erosion. That's been a good thing. We haven't seen a lot of the sand wash back out, but the winds have really ramped up. We haven't seen a ton of rain as of late. Some of those bands have kind of moved a little bit south of us down toward Boca. So we come in with a lot of rain at times. We come in with a lot of wind at times. It's gusty, that's for sure. We don't have incredibly high sustained winds. We've been measuring on our anemometer winds right around 30 to 35 miles an hour, with gusts higher than that about an hour ago. We measured a wind gust with our handheld here right around 55 miles an hour. Certainly, we're watching for the potential for some flooding. Heavy rain is going to encompass a large area here in South Florida, and so many areas here will be watching for high water on the roadways, and we'll be watching for many areas that are susceptible to low-lying flooding for that. So over the next, say, 48 hours, the potential for heavy rain is definitely there. We're running a little bit of a deficit right here in West Palm Beach, but a lot of rain in a short amount of time is something we don't want to see. Low-lying flooding on the roadways, and also the EOC is recommending that people, if they can, get outside of their homes and clear out some of the storm drains if it's safe enough for them to be outside, and make sure they're not cluttered with debris so they don't get clogged up, so all that water can run down into the storm drains and not fill the roads, and that will definitely help as far as road flooding goes. Obviously, some of the worst conditions that we've seen, Vivian, Jeff, occurring for us right now. We may be in this for a couple of more hours before things start to get better as the eastern eye wall moves past us. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Mike Bettis. He is live there near Palm Beach, but we have other crews in the field.
That's right. Let's just go south of Mike to our very own storm tracker, Jim Cantori. He's in Fort Lauderdale. Now, Jim, we've just gotten official reports that at the airport in Fort Lauderdale, a 66-mile-an-hour wind gust. Now, have you can you verify any gusts like that from where you are?
Absolutely, Viv. It's definitely blowing here. This eye is starting to kind of wrap in tight, and our winds have shifted too. They've gone from west-northwest to more of a northeasterly flow. So this thing's starting to wrap in here. Looks like it's going to come right over us, the tight part of this wall. I mean, we're not talking about 10 miles to the north or the south of this thing, but the worst of this hurricane definitely coming in. Airport's supposed to close at 7 o'clock tonight. Hopefully they got all the flights out that they wanted to, because certainly with the kind of wind and the gustiness that it's coming in through right now, we're not going to see any more planes obviously taking off. We have had the power flash here at the hotel that we're staying at. The power has flashed and occasionally gone off, so sporadic power outages, reports of some downed power lines in Broward County as well. Nobody needs to be evacuating right now. Everybody just needs to stay put and realize that the worst of this storm is coming in, because it is still heavily east loaded. A lot of the rain is on the eastern side of it, and we are starting to get into some of that rain right now, and it's coming down unfortunately horizontally, and yeah, at 60 miles an hour, it definitely stings. Let's show you some pictures here. The surfers out in abundance. We're talking about, there must have been 6, 7 dozen of these folks out here today enjoying a nice little swell coming on in, but I'll tell you, conditions went really downhill. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. I'm hearing something in my ear. Anyway, we got a chance to talk to a couple of these surfers today. This is what they had to say about going in. Okay, we don't have that. I'm sorry, we don't have that. Let's go ahead and show you the water right now. Here it is. You can see it behind me here. This is why all of the surfers have pretty much gotten out of the water. It's just gotten really frothy. We had that outer band that Mike Bettis dealt with to the north. He dealt with it earlier. We'll have much more coming up.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Hello and welcome back as we continue to track Hurricane Katrina.
Let's update you on the very latest watches and warnings associated with this hurricane. There are hurricane warnings up from Vero Beach down to Florida City and also Lake Okeechobee, and there are tropical storm warnings still in effect for the northwest Bahamas and tropical storm watches up north of Vero Beach to Titusville and on the west coast of Florida from Inglewood down to Florida City and out in the Keys to the 7 Mile Bridge.
Let's get the very latest from Katrina, on Katrina, from our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons.
And Dr. Steve, have we seen the strongest winds at the coast yet?
We sure haven't. The strongest winds are yet to come in, and that's because they're probably on the back side of the circulation in the northeastern quadrant that's still waiting to come in, probably into the Fort Lauderdale area. Here's the latest information from the Hurricane Center at 5 p.m. 15 miles east-northeast of Fort Lauderdale, winds 75 miles per hour, moving west at 6. And when we look at the radar here, you'll see that it's dipping ever so slightly to the south. First, let me show you this big burst in thunderstorms just off the coast near Miami Beach. So you're in for some very heavy rain here the next couple of hours. Okay, let's get to the radar now. Here you see the circulation. There it is right there. And notice it's taking a little while, but it doesn't want to come in. It's staying just offshore. And this big core of strong winds in here that's going to come onshore right in the Fort Lauderdale area within the next half hour or so will probably be the strongest winds we see. In the meantime, strongest winds Miami sees have not come in yet either, as the system moves basically to the west-southwest briefly on the track that's basically going to end up going to the west. So very heavy rain coming in, and the strongest winds probably within the next hour or so. Now, in the meantime, what are the impacts going to be overall? We expect some power outages in this area, relatively minor damage to structures themselves. If you have something that's not tied down, or lawn furniture may blow around a bit, but no major structure damage is expected. So just the power outages, likely in the orange area, possible in the yellow area as the circulation moves in the next 6 to 12 hours. What do we expect relative to the water rises at the coastline? About 3 to 5 feet at the coast maximum, right in the right front quadrant where the wind comes onshore. And that's occurring right now, probably just north of Fort Lauderdale. And that'll continue for the next hour or two, and then it'll start to drop down. In the meantime, the wave action 10 to 15 feet, that's going to become rather unorganized as the winds will come out of the north and then back out of the southeast. So it'll be very, very dangerous out there to be in the water. Surfers, it's about time to get out of the water unless you're well away from the center up to the north here, where the waves are smaller and the currents are far less. So in the meantime, we expect it to come across the coast. Whether it turns north or takes a turn more toward the west-northwest is yet to be seen. Keep watching the Weather Channel. Vivian, Jeff?
Well, without a doubt, we'll continue to watch the Weather Channel for the very latest. And of course, Dr. Lyons will be back with more on Hurricane Katrina at 10 before the hour in the Tropical Update.
And we'll continue to hear from storm tracker Jim Cantori, meteorologist Mike Bettis, and live reports throughout the night from coastal Florida.
Meanwhile, evacuations are underway, voluntary evacuations anyway, for the barrier islands and mobile home parks in Broward County. We'll be back.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Atlanta, you broke a record, but not one that anyone may be too happy about. You now have a new record for consecutive hot and muggy summer nights. Overnight low has not been below 70 degrees now for the past 48 days. And those electric bills keep climbing.
I know.
And you can keep adding to that record tonight in hot and muggy Atlanta.
That's right. Dallas and Houston also been a little steamy. When will we get a break over the Deep South?
Good question. And how will Katrina impact the weather in the Southeast over the next 7 days?
Well, let's get all the answers. We have it for you. It's time for the Weekly Planner, starting with tomorrow morning's weather map. And you can see Katrina making inroads inland at this hour. So by tomorrow morning, the center of circulation will be over the southern peninsula of Florida. At the same time, we have a couple of frontal boundaries developing in the middle of the country, so scattered showers and thunderstorms expected over the upper Mississippi River Valley back into the Central Plains for your Friday. Now, this is your Friday's weather picture. It'll be dry over the Northeast. Another nice day for you, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, down to the D.C. area. And even as you go westward now into the Pacific Northwest from Seattle to San Francisco and Los Angeles, a pretty nice TGIF is shaping up for you. But going through the weekend now, of course, all of our eyes will be on Katrina because it is very well likely to re-emerge back over open waters in the eastern Gulf of Mexico as we go through the weekend. The wee hours of Monday morning, it could be making landfall again somewhere in the central or eastern Gulf coastal region. But here's a look at the inland forecast for Saturday. Scattered showers from the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma all the way into the eastern Great Lakes area. Even some of the rain could push into the western parts of Pennsylvania and western New York on Saturday afternoon. Now Sunday, you get somewhat of a break for this region, but the scattered showers for the eastern seaboard. And keep in mind now, Katrina will be somewhere in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico and overnight on Sunday into early Monday morning, bringing all of its deep tropical moisture maybe into southern Alabama, somewhere over the panhandle of Florida. So, you know, we won't be done watching for Katrina even as we go through the next 3 days or so. So we'll keep you posted for sure. By Monday, though, we'll focus our attention too on the Pacific Northwest with wet weather, and then a lot of this rain will move into the western high plains by Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon. Now let's check on the temperatures. Will it cool off any over the Deep South? That's the #1 question you want answered, huh? In Dallas and Oklahoma City and Houston. Well, tomorrow still hot, especially in Dallas with 100s. We'll break the heat a little bit anyway. On Saturday, we're talking forecast highs in the 90s. You'll have to go to northern Minnesota for a real cool down with afternoon highs in the 70s. And actually, with the rain and clouds coming into the Pacific Northwest on Monday and Tuesday, afternoon highs will be the coolest in Washington State and Oregon. And here's a look at the projected forecast highs for Wednesday of next week.
Our coverage of Katrina continues. Many schools in South Florida will be closed right through tomorrow, and many schools right now being used as shelters.
Yeah, the waves are kicking up in Palm Beach, Florida. We'll check on the winds when we go live to talk with Mike Bettis. That's coming right up, so stay with us.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
You're looking at brand new video out of Fort Lauderdale. Some of the strongest winds are hitting this area of Florida with right now the latest wind gust up to 66 miles an hour. Fort Lauderdale is coming into the western eye wall right now. Heavier rain north and south of this area. Jim Cantore will be live there and will join us at the bottom of the hour.
Hello and welcome back as we continue to track Hurricane Katrina.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the very latest radar image that we have. And again, the center of circulation right now just offshore, maybe just to the southeast there of Fort Lauderdale, but it's the yellows and oranges wrapping around that center. That's where the strongest winds are. Those will be coming onshore here in the next hour or so.
Which means the eastern eye wall is yet to come within the next couple of hours. And of course, we'll keep you posted on the latest as Hurricane Katrina moves onshore.
Our live coverage of Katrina continues from Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach next.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Good evening, everybody. We are in Fort Lauderdale taking a direct hit from Hurricane Katrina. Little rain, little sand, doesn't feel very good. We'll give you a live report and tell you what 67-mile-an-hour winds feel like in just a moment.
And the beaches of South Florida have been preparing for Katrina. People have been packing up and stocking up and gearing up for this 11th named storm, now a hurricane, of this busy tropical season.
And we thank you for keeping it tuned to Afternoon Outlook. We continue to track Hurricane Katrina. It slowed down a little bit, but it did strengthen right before making landfall.
Of course, the biggest threat from Katrina, the huge amount of rain that will be saturating parts of South Florida. Now, this is the southern extent of the hurricane. We wanted to show you this because there's a band of thunderstorms coming into the lower Keys and a tornado warning for the lower Keys in Monroe County in Florida. Doppler radar indicating a violent waterspout 7 miles north of Big Torch Key, or about 26 miles west of Marathon, moving southeast at 40. Folks, this is moving right into the lower Keys there. And again, this is going to be common in some of these bands that we have the potential of tornadoes.
Yeah, that's right, the threat of severe weather. So let's go now to our storm tracker, Jim Cantore. He is standing by in the Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale actually, and he joins us now with the latest. Jim, you have those 60-mile-an-hour winds?
Oh, baby, we're just getting hammered right here. I mean, you're just talking about heavy rain, winds 50 to 60 miles an hour. Of course, the water isn't that far up the beach here, so occasionally, because it's running parallel or just a little bit onshore, we're getting the sand mixed in and just kind of running up the beach. My cameraman can't point to it, obviously that well, we don't want to ruin the lens, but you can see, I mean, just an incredible Atlantic Ocean here. I'm just shocked at what I left this morning. Turquoise blue water in South Beach. In no later than 4 hours did we deal with what I'm seeing behind me here. Just unbelievable. Again, winds continue to be gusty. You can see them blowing the palm leaves around. Oh, that sand is just miserable. The airport is going to be closing down here within the hour, so they say pretty tough to get a flight out here with the winds the way they are. We have loss of power here where we are here in Fort Lauderdale. Power lines are down, as we've heard, in Broward County, which is where I'm at as well. Again, 60 to 70 mile an hour winds have already moved through, and we are dealing with the worst of this storm right now. It's going to come on in, and because it's a slow mover, it's going to take a long time, so we're going to have a long, drawn-out night here. And as we talked about all day, the eastern side of this storm is very, very heavily waterlogged, so we're going to deal with a lot of rain with this thing. But it's just incredible. Occasionally you kind of look up and you see a little bit of a hole in the clouds, and the clouds just race on by, and no sooner do you look up than those clouds just fill in, and a heavy rain band with this wind just comes on through. So, guys, we are taking the full hit of Katrina right now, and I'll tell you, even though it's a minimal hurricane, it doesn't feel very good on your face.
Jim, I've been there, buddy. I've been there with you, but I got to ask you, what direction is that wind coming in now? Do you think it's still coming out of the northeast?
Absolutely, Jeff. It's definitely northeast. When we started really about an hour and a half ago, winds were out of the northwest, and they've come all the way around out of the northeast. So that center of circulation, just down to our south, if you will, or just off to our east. And we do expect those winds to change direction, obviously, as this storm comes right overhead. But right now, again, Jeff, we're taking the eye wall, and we're taking it pretty bad. Back to you.
All right, Jim, hang in there, buddy, because you got the worst of it, I think, coming up here in the next hour or so.
I know, very angry seas behind him. Let's go now to our very own Mike Bettis. He's a little farther north of the Fort Lauderdale area in Palm Beach. And Mike, what are the conditions that you're feeling?
We are seeing some of the strongest winds that we've felt with this hurricane so far, Vivian. We've measured winds right here at the beach gusting to 55 miles an hour. They've generally been steady between 35 and 40 miles an hour, but at times we get a pretty good gust and almost knocks you off your feet. So pretty much as strong as we've seen the winds so far today, and they ramped up very quickly. It wasn't just a couple of hours ago. We were out here in t-shirts and just walking around, and it was no big deal at all. So things went downhill very rapidly here. Certainly something to mention. We haven't had a whole lot of rain. Let's show you what's going on in Sky Tracker. Some of the heaviest bands of rain are south of our present location here in Palm Beach. At times, it's a little windy and it's a little bit rainy. But as far as the rain goes, we haven't had the heavy thunderstorm bands. There was a moment about 40 minutes ago or so we had a little bit of lightning and thunder, but we haven't seen anything like that since. So as far as rain goes, we're not contending with that right now. That certainly may change as we go through the night and Katrina makes more impact inland as well. As far as what's going on with our forecast here, as you might expect, it's not a very good one. Tonight, rainy, windy. We're looking for winds at 35 to 50 miles an hour with wind gusts that could potentially be higher than that. They may continue even into the early morning hours on Friday, but gradually should begin to taper off as we go into Friday. Temperatures in the afternoon will be close to 90 degrees, rainy and windy on Friday. Watch for continuation of potential some flooding, and even into the weekend, watching for more rain to come into the Palm Beach area. One of the biggest concerns as we've been following for the past 2 days is the threat for flooding, and that's definitely a possibility with heavy rain coming down over the next 48 hours, Vivian. But right now, the biggest concern at this very moment are the winds, and at times on the beach gusting to 55 miles an hour right here in Palm Beach.
All right, hold on there, Mike, and of course we'll be back with you throughout the evening for the latest updates.
Okay, where is Katrina going from this point? Drastic changes over the last 6 hours, and I'll tell you what, over the weekend we'll watch this system re-emerge back over open waters, and unfortunately we're looking at the central eastern Gulf coastal region, including the panhandle of Florida, for another landfall of Katrina.
They don't want to hear that. We'll be back to talk about the severe weather threat to Florida. Of course, we have that tornado warning in the lower Keys and Monroe County. We'll talk about that with Greg Forbes when he joins us next.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Hello and welcome back to our in-depth coverage of Hurricane Katrina. As we've been telling you all afternoon, Katrina will bring a lot of rain to South Florida.
But with any tropical storm, or hurricane in this case, there's also the threat of tornadoes as the system makes landfall. Now to talk more about that, the threat of tornadoes as Katrina moves inland, let's bring in our severe weather expert, Greg Forbes. And Greg, kind of an odd place for this tornado warning that we're getting now to be in relation to the hurricane.
It sure is, Jeff. It's down to the southwest of the center. Usually it's those storms north and east that have the tornado threat. This is the strongest outer band, though. It's going south eastward across the lower Keys, so there is a tornado possibility, especially with that one real big storm there. Now I'll slide off to the north and east. You'll see the center is well off to the north and east. We have had, though, a number of places along the coast there, north and south of Fort Lauderdale, that have had 60, 66 mile per hour type wind gusts as the circulation center moves onshore. A lot of heavy rain actually will follow the arrival onshore on the east side and southeast side. So heavy rain, perhaps a foot or so of rain, are going to be the big problems. In fact, let's switch sources. We'll see that this is going to be a less of a tornado threat than a lot of those storms last year. 74 tornadoes in all from the tropical storms and hurricanes last year. Don't expect to have that this time. A few isolated tornadoes. What we will have, though, is a lot of that heavy rain, a few isolated tornadoes. Some wind gusts. We've had some reports now of trees being knocked down in some of the 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And a lot of heavy rain. That won't end. It will continue well on into the day. Tomorrow, some places could get a foot of rain. Now, some place in the central U.S. has had similar to that. In fact, about 9 inches of rain there. El Dorado, Arkansas, just east of Wichita. See how deep the water is there. Flooding cars. There were apartments that had to be evacuated. And a number of roads flooded. Even some cattle that were drowned in this heavy flood situation. Unfortunately, there is a chance again of some heavy rain for that. We'll go back to the map and see that another round of heavy rain overnight tonight could move into that southeast Kansas, Missouri area as an aftermath of some of the severe storms that may pool some of their resources out in the western portions of these red areas and then push south and east overnight. So a stormy central part of the U.S. and, of course, Katrina in Florida. Jeff, Vivian?
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Of course, Greg will be with us, as well as Dr. Steve Lyons, to keep updated on the hurricane and, of course, the severe weather threat.
Okay, so let's just give you the bottom line very quickly on Hurricane Katrina. Landfall imminent. We already have the western eye wall coming onshore in southeast Florida, and the impacts, we think, will continue to spread inland, and that is, of course, the threat of severe weather and flooding rains probable. So our primary story, definitely Hurricane Katrina, but our other story is definitely the threat of severe weather in the middle of the country. Now, the Storm Prediction Center has issued 2 severe thunderstorm watches. This one over northeastern Colorado, western Nebraska, and the other, this is the more recent of the 2, which spreads into the west central parts of Minnesota and eastern South Dakota. But I also want to point out the threat of severe weather that we've had just south of the St. Louis area, kind of zooming in on the severe weather watches first of all. But now let's take you just south and east of St. Louis, because this little cluster earlier did warrant a severe thunderstorm warning, but now that it has moved off to the south and east, that warning has been allowed to expire. But we are watching this little cluster very closely. So if you live, say, just south and east of the St. Louis area, getting on Interstate 55 near Cape Girardeau, then you want to watch out for this small cluster of storms. Now let's talk more about the severe weather watch areas. And again, northeastern Colorado included. So just east of Denver, we've had some very intense storms, as you can see, as they move just south and east of the city, moving away from Denver right now. So that is good news. But let's take you a little farther north and east to the other severe weather watch, where those storms in South Dakota are causing problems as well.
Reports of damage now in Broward County. Numerous 10-foot trees down at West Fork Shopping Center. Steve Lyons joins us next.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Hello and welcome back. It's not only been a busy tropical season here, of course, our latest being Katrina, but it's also been a busy typhoon season in the Western Pacific.
Tokyo, for example, feeling the effects of Typhoon Mawar.
The rough seas are battering the shores. Tokyo can expect 89-mile-an-hour winds.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
And going there in South Florida, and there's going to be a lot more where that came from. The wind's now 75 miles an hour officially. The winds have gusted to nearly hurricane force now in southeast Florida. It is moving towards the west at 6 miles an hour, and the center of this storm is now very, very close to the coast, 10 miles to the east-southeast of Fort Lauderdale, now working a little bit more towards the south of west, maybe west-southwest at this point. You can see how it dropped just a little bit there. So again, the worst of the weather here in this northern eye wall is going to be coming onshore very close to Fort Lauderdale. It is going to be very bad indeed in Fort Lauderdale with that wind coming on board. But notice that it's moving very, very slowly, and that's important too, because with that slow movement, we're going to see a lot of rain in South Florida tonight, very heavy rain, and there certainly could be flooding. You do want to watch out for that. Let's talk about the wind gusts here. Again, we saw a 68-mile-an-hour wind gust in Fort Lauderdale. Damage has been reported in Broward County. There will be more damage tonight. The good news is we don't think there will be much in the way of additional strengthening, so it's not going to get get much stronger than a Category 1 hurricane, if at all stronger. That's certainly good, but again, there's going to be a lot of rain tonight as this thing only very slowly makes its way towards the west-southwest and across the southern part of the state. Well, we have some other weather to tell you about, and with more on that, here's Jennifer.
Yeah, we're also looking at some pretty rough stuff across the middle of the country tonight. In fact, we've had heavy rain to deal with throughout much of central portions of Kansas. You really got hit hard yesterday and last night with so much rain. Anywhere from 7 to 9 inches fell, and flooding certainly a big concern here, because you know why? We could be looking at more rain. We're watching a frontal system come through the upper Midwest into the northern plains right now, and it's producing some strong thunderstorms. So we're concerned here with some severe weather. And as this front moves across the area, we could be dealing with some hail, as well as some strong gusty winds out across western Nebraska, northeastern Colorado, as well as over into eastern South Dakota. It's been a pretty rough time here across the plains. We've had a lot of rain lately, and to south central Kansas, as that video was showing us, plenty of rain doing a lot of damage across the area with so much activity. Flood watch is obviously in effect for the region with that other front coming through. It could be producing about an inch of rain in some spots, but notice across the Sunshine State with our hurricane coming through, we could be dealing with a lot of rain, possibly up to 4 inches as we go through the next few hours and through the night. And flooding is obviously a big concern. Coming up, we'll have the latest on the traveling conditions over the Sunshine State and throughout the southeast. But we leave you tonight with a look at all the rough weather going through Florida right now.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
The pier at Pompano Beach is holding up well to the battering it's getting from Katrina's waves. The surge is staying low because Katrina is such a slow-moving system, and that means less water is being pushed against the pier.
And welcome back here to PM Edition and our special coverage of Hurricane Katrina, which is moving now over South Florida.
And let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, we have reports of 68-mile-an-hour wind in Fort Lauderdale. I'm sure people down there are wondering how much worse, if at all, is it going to get, and how long is it going to last?
Well, it could get a little bit worse before it gets better, and we have this huge cluster of deep, cold cloud tops here in that general vicinity. These are 80 degrees below zero. That's how high these cloud tops are, so very heavy flooding rains. But that doesn't tell the whole picture. Inside that is a circulation center, and we can see that very nicely on the radar imagery, and it's coming onshore in northern Fort Lauderdale right now. And it's in these yellow bands around there, we call the eye wall, that these strong winds are occurring. And it's causing some trees to go down and some significant power outages in the area, particularly the onshore component on the north side. By the time it gets around to the other side, it's weakened a little bit. But even in North Miami, you're getting pounded with some pretty strong winds. But keep in mind, these gusts we've seen are not quite to hurricane strength. We're not seeing yet the sustained winds to hurricane strength that are probably in the back edge of the circulation. The bottom line here, expect numerous power outages, basically from Boca Raton down to northern Miami over the next few hours as that system moves inland toward the west, but very slowly. Power outages likely in this area and possible as it moves inland and weakens over the next 6 to 12 hours. This is going to be primarily a rain event, but the wind impacts are going to be significant relative to trees and power outage losses. So we've tried to warn you that even though it's not going to be extremely damaging to structures, we could have significant power outages, and we're seeing that in a localized area there in this very small but tight core of strong winds that seem to have been strengthening right at the coastline. Now here's our projected path over the next 24 hours inland to the west, basically, coming back offshore with the possibility to strengthen, and then heading up, we think, to the northern Florida Panhandle over the next few days. And of course, as it weakens, it'll have a chance to re-strengthen in the northern Gulf of Mexico over the next few days. We'll monitor this one carefully. Back to you in the studio, Carl.
All right, thanks so much, Dr. Lyons. And we want to go back to Palm Beach, where Mike Bettis is standing by live. And again, Mike, we just got the latest on Katrina from Dr. Lyons, but now we want to see how this storm is impacting your area.
Well, we certainly have seen a few impacts already. The winds, once they picked up, I started to see some sporadic power outages. So one thing of note is that we have some street lights that are out right now. And if you're traveling tonight and you come upon one of those intersections where the power is out, you want to treat that intersection as a four-way stop. Although the winds have picked up, the rain has actually let up, so we haven't had a lot of rain in the past couple of hours. And also of interesting note, we've been watching the waves all day long. They really ramped up throughout the morning, and we've actually noticed that the waves are coming in quicker sets, and they're not nearly as big as they were, say, just 2 hours ago. And so they're breaking a lot smaller now and a lot shorter, and the waves aren't crashing up on the beach quite as high either. So we were a little bit concerned with the waves that were higher earlier that we'd see some beach erosion. We haven't noticed that taking place so much right now, and that is very good news. But one thing we've been following and wanted to follow with this storm over the past couple of days is what the threat for rain was going to be. We still anticipate quite a bit of rain with this storm. We talked with Palm Beach County EOC and asked them what their concern was, knowing that heavy rain is moving in.
Well, the National Hurricane Center has indicated that some of the rain bands have 6 to 12 inches. And there are other really heavy rain bands that could have as much as 15 to 20 inches. But we've been in contact with the Water Management District in anticipation of heavy rainfall. They've lowered the water level. But we are anticipating some localized flooding. We've been in contact with the Governor's Hurricane Center in Tallahassee, and they are also concerned about some serious flooding.
So flooding is definitely a concern for us. The EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, has been in full operation since early this morning. Evacuations were in effect early this morning for all the barrier islands. A lot of folks took those warnings very seriously and left. We haven't seen anyone down here on the beach. That has been very good news. But Carl and Jennifer, a couple of elements to watch. We definitely have seen the power outages, have not seen a lot of structural damage. And one thing we'll now look for in the future over the next, say, 24 to 48 hours, the potential for flooding.
All right, thanks so much, Mike.
Our coverage will continue in just moments.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Well, the center of Hurricane Katrina coming right across Fort Lauderdale right now. Winds gusting up to 68 miles an hour. Again, the big threat from this will be strong gusty winds as well as very heavy rainfall. Again, here is the latest on Katrina just to the east of Fort Lauderdale, moving to the west. It'll move over the southern tip of Florida as we go through the night and into tomorrow, and it is going to continue to bring very heavy rainfall. We could be looking at anywhere from perhaps 5 to maybe up to 10 to even 12 inches of rain in some spots.
Could be really awful in some areas as far as rainfall. Hello and welcome back to our special coverage of Hurricane Katrina as it continues to make landfall over South Florida.
And again, our big concern is all the rain that this is going to make. So how is it going to look for the next several days? Here's Carl with a look.
Well, tomorrow, obviously, we have all kinds of problems in South Florida and Central Florida. A lot of rain. The wind will be diminishing as the center of the storm moves across the southern part of the state, but there will be all kinds of rain here in Florida tomorrow, and we'll be watching it as it moves out, most likely towards the Gulf of Mexico and towards the west coast of Florida. We've got a new storm coming down into the plains tomorrow, scattered storms along with that. There could be some very strong storms in the plains and also scattered storms here into the Ohio Valley. And in the west, things have really calmed down. A lot of hot weather, a lot of sunshine, just a few showers here in parts of New Mexico and the high plains. We'll find more of that as we go on into Saturday here. Our front continues to work south and eastward, so more scattered storms through the Ohio Valley, very strong storms in some cases. We could still feel the impact of Katrina here in Florida, depending on how close to the state it is. There is potential for the storm to turn here and work up just off the coast here or maybe along the coast. There is also potential for the system to work farther westward and then towards the northern Gulf Coast, in which case there would be less of an impact, we think, on Saturday in Florida. Notice that we still do have quite a bit of rain here on Sunday. The storm getting closer, we think, to the Florida Panhandle or the northern Gulf Coast, and it looks like it may make landfall along the northern Gulf Coast, say in the Florida Panhandle or maybe a little farther westward, and that would be most likely on Monday, although that is subject to change. That's the way it looks right now. And of course, if it's over open water for a long period of time, it has more time to strengthen, so it's something that we will have to watch very carefully. You need to start thinking now about what you're going to do to get ready for this thing if it happens to redevelop and really intensify. More scattered storms here along the East Coast on Tuesday, and then things quiet down on the East Coast on Wednesday. pretty quiet across the country on Thursday. Jennifer?
Let's talk about the temperatures because it's still going to be very hot across much of Texas. We're looking again at the heat into the 100s for tomorrow across Dallas, and then right along 35 here. It stays in the 100s as we go into your Saturday. Across much of the southeast is where the 90s are going to be, but we will find the 80s making a comeback over into the Great Lakes across the east as well. Into the weekend, we find some cooler weather into the Pacific Northwest with the rain coming in, highs in the 60s in some spots, but again, temperatures staying a little on the warm side as we go through the weekend and into next week.
Well, 30 to 60 mile per hour wind, that's what you've had in Palm Beach, Florida, and now the storm is moving along the coast.
And people are packed up and are definitely hunkering down for the next round of Hurricane Katrina.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Welcome back here. Katrina, now a hurricane and moving across South Florida as we speak.
And we have had some very gusty wind in Fort Lauderdale. Winds now coming out of the northeast and winds gusting as high as 68 miles an hour in Fort Lauderdale. We have had reports of damage in Broward County, trees and power lines down. We'll see more of that before it gets better as the center is now just beginning to near the coast. However, that's not going to be the primary impact. We think heavy rain will be the primary impact.
And as we go through the night and throughout the day tomorrow, much of the Sunshine State will continue to find rain in the forecast. 1 to 2 inches expected across northern Florida through Ocala into Tampa and over to the Space Coast, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches. And across South Florida, again, up to 4 inches, but some local areas could definitely see almost a foot of rain from this hurricane.
Well, our coverage of Hurricane Katrina continues with a live report from Mike Bettis in just moments.
And here is a look at some of the closings in South Florida due to Katrina. We'll be right back.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Here is how Katrina looks in Palm Beach, Florida, where winds have been gusting up to around 55 miles an hour, and so far only a quarter of an inch of rain has fallen. The eye is making landfall south of Palm Beach. It's near Fort Lauderdale, and flights have stopped about an hour ago out of Palm Beach International Airport.
And welcome back to our continuing coverage of Katrina, now a minimal hurricane and a huge rain threat and wind threat for South Florida. I'm Carl Parker.
And I'm Jennifer Lopez. Katrina has been getting stronger all day long, and now it is slowly moving onshore over the southeast coast. Let's look at the radar real quick. And again, we're seeing the eye move right through Fort Lauderdale, coming across the area, producing some very strong winds. Within the past hour, we've had a gust up to 68 miles an hour. And again, as you can see from the radar, a lot of rain from this, and the rain and the wind are going to be some big problems as we go through the next few hours.
And we have live team coverage in South Florida tonight. Joining us from Palm Beach, Florida is Mike Bettis, and in Fort Lauderdale, Florida is Storm Tracker Jim Cantori. Let's go to Mike first. And Mike, the winds have really picked up. What should folks in Palm Beach expect tonight?
Well, definitely our forecast for winds tonight is anywhere between, say, 35 and 50 miles an hour, with wind gusts higher than that. And we certainly have been feeling that through the afternoon. As far as wind gusts go here in West Palm Beach, officially reporting a 37-mile-an-hour wind gust. We, right here at our current location at the beach, have measured a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust. You work your way farther southward towards, say, Fort Lauderdale, where Jim is at, we have had wind gusts nearly 70 miles an hour. So the winds have ramped up very quickly with Hurricane Katrina. One thing that's very interesting is we have not had hardly any rain since the winds increased. So one's gone up and one's gone down, but we do anticipate once our winds decrease, we may see more steady rain come in overnight tonight, and the threat for flooding will obviously be there. It's been a fairly steady northwest wind over the past couple of hours. We anticipate that turning maybe a little bit more easterly, I should say, as Katrina's eastern eye wall makes its way onto land, and we'll see a bit of a wind shift. Also want to note that a lot of our waves behind us have actually decreased in size, increased in sets, but have decreased in size, and so not a huge threat at this point, we don't believe now, for any beach erosion. Always when you have a landfalling tropical system, you have a risk for severe weather. Let's now bring in our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes. And Dr. Forbes, how big of risk are we tonight for tornadoes and thunderstorms?
Well, Mike, the tornado threat is relatively low, fortunately, with Katrina. Flooding and damaging winds, though, are relatively high. Let's take a look. You can see now the donut hole center of Katrina just about ready to make onshore, make landfall there just south of Fort Lauderdale. And this band of strong winds coming onshore there, anywhere now between North Miami Beach and Miami Gardens and up to Pompano Beach and Coral Springs, you're getting winds now 60 to 70 mile per hour gusts, reports of trees and power lines down. This band down around Miami, the winds there are offshore. They're not quite as strong. They're going in the opposite direction from the eye. But later on, as the southerly winds come in, the damaging winds could extend a little bit farther south into Miami. No indication of tornadoes with these. We've been lucky. Those outer rain bands that would have been off to the north and west or north and east of Katrina have been pretty weak, and they haven't supported any kind of tornado circulations. Now let's switch sources here. Last year, that was sure not the case, though. Look at all these tropical systems last year that spawned a total of 74 tornadoes in Florida, more than 300 nationwide. We aren't going to see anything like that today, but we are on the lookout for very heavy rain, the southern two-thirds of the Florida peninsula, and an isolated chance of a tornado, some damaging winds moving across that area. Now, one other location that we've seen a lot of heavy rain is in Kansas. Last night and this morning, areas El Dorado, just east of the Wichita area, had about 9 inches of rain. Now, this is what you could see by this time tomorrow in parts of southern Florida, where you could get up to a foot of rain. Here in Kansas, we had some buildings that had to be evacuated, cars immersed, even some cattle that drowned in all this very heavy rain. About 9 inches fell there. Now, let's go back to the weather maps, and we'll see that that area in Kansas, once again later tonight, will have a chance of repeated rains, and the ground is saturated. That could become a big problem again as these isolated severe storms farther to the west push their way off toward the east during the overnight hours. So we're continuing to watch Katrina in Florida and severe storms in the central part of the country. Now let's go back to the studio.
All right, Greg, thank you so much. Here now is the bottom line on Katrina.
And again, it's making landfall right now, coming across Fort Lauderdale, where winds have been as high as around 68 to nearly 70 miles an hour. The impacts will continue to spread across the southern half of Florida as we go through the night and even into tomorrow. We can still be expecting rainfall from this system, as well as some strong gusty winds.
So what is going on right now? Well, you can see the center of the storm is now right on shore, very close to Fort Lauderdale. It is moving along towards the west, or maybe a little south of west, at about 6 miles an hour. Wind is going to be a big problem tonight. We've already had winds gusting to, as Jennifer mentioned, up to 70 miles an hour, and we have had reports of trees and power lines down. So wind will be a problem, especially in South Florida, and then rain will continue to be a problem as those bands work on shore through the night tonight. A lot of very heavy rain, and there could be flooding in low-lying areas.
And as we go through the evening and throughout the weekend, we're going to watch this system cross over South Florida, reemerge out into the Gulf of Mexico, and continue a northward movement. So we're certainly concerned across the panhandle of Florida and right up the west coast of the Sunshine State, as this system could certainly be bringing or continuing to bring heavy rain to this area.
And coming up, we'll show you where flooding could be a problem more specifically as Hurricane Katrina bears down on the Sunshine State. Welcome back. We continue to track Hurricane Katrina.
And let's give you the latest on this storm and find out where it's expected to go. The projected path from this system takes it, again, coming on into the southern tip of Florida, coming into Fort Lauderdale right now, then pushing westward, actually seeming like it's going to be moving right over the southern tip of the state, right down Alligator Alley perhaps, then reemerging out in the Gulf of Mexico, or perhaps bringing a good chance of rain, or it will be bringing a good chance of rain into St. Petersburg, all the way up into the Tampa Bay area as well, and then moving northward. Again, moving out into the Gulf of Mexico, then pushing northward, perhaps making a second landfall somewhere in the panhandle of Florida.
Here is the very latest on the storm. The wind's now 75 miles an hour. That is a minimal hurricane. Does that mean it's not going to cause any damage? Absolutely not. We do expect to see that there will be damage through a lot of South Florida. We've already had reports of trees and power lines down. Numerous 10-foot trees down at West Fork Shopping Center near Dykes Road and Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines. Winds gusting to 68 miles an hour in Fort Lauderdale, and we do expect to see a lot more in the way of wind over the next few hours here.
And look at the rainfall right now. And again, the wind gust up to around 51 miles an hour into Fort Lauderdale. But again, just within the past hour, we had a wind gust up to 68 miles an hour. So again, the center of circulation coming in as we go through the evening, through at least the next hour. Again, 51-mile-an-hour winds right now, but they're gusting. As we look at the gusts, they're up to 68 in Fort Lauderdale, gusting up to 37 in West Palm, up to 48 rather into Miami. And again, rainfall is definitely going to be a big problem here as the rain just continues to come down, as well as the strong gusty winds, and we'll continue to see that a threat through the night and even into tomorrow. Although the center of circulation will be over land by tomorrow, we're still going to be dealing with some gusty winds as well as some pretty heavy rainfall.
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on locally now. We do have schools expected to be closed on Friday in Collier County. Residents in mobile homes recommended for an evacuation. A shelter is open in Glades County. A voluntary evacuation for mobile homes in low-lying areas began this afternoon, early this afternoon. We are not looking for much in the way of storm surge, so that certainly is some good news. Again, the center of the storm is now moving in very close to Fort Lauderdale, and you can see that northern eye wall. That's going to be moving right into Broward County there, so very gusty winds within that northern eye wall. We are talking about winds gusting to hurricane force and perhaps stronger. So we do expect quite a bit more in the way of wind damage, potential wind damage in that 95 corridor from, say, southeastern Palm Beach County into eastern Broward County and then right down into Miami-Dade County. And beyond that, heavy rain is going to be the big concern. The system is not moving very quickly at all. It's only moving to the west or west-southwest at about 6 miles an hour, and for that reason, we do expect there to be very heavy rain, 4 or 5 inches in some areas, and maybe well over that in some isolated areas before it's all said and done. So flooding is a possibility in this area.
And then as we go through the weekend, we're expecting the center to move across the southern tip of the state, then pushing out into the Gulf of Mexico, and then perhaps being a problem for the southeast because it could be making another landfall, still as a hurricane here, over into the panhandle of Florida, then moving up into the southeast. The southeast has dealt with a lot of rain from the past several weeks, so we could be looking at a lot of flooding over the southeast as Hurricane Katrina still makes its way through the area. So flooding and windy weather, a big concern through the Sunshine State, the southern half of the Sunshine State, as we go through the evening.
Now, what's going to happen tomorrow? Well, we will continue to see the very heavy rain here through a lot of South Florida as well as into east central Florida. The wind should begin to die down as the center of the storm works across the southern part of the state. But again, as Jennifer mentioned, it is going to reemerge, we think, into the Gulf of Mexico, after which time it could cause some serious problems as it makes its way towards the Florida Panhandle or the northern Gulf Coast. That is most likely to be during the day on Monday. That's the way it looks right now, but there is potential for that to be changed in one direction or another. Not much going on farther northward here. As we look at the airport impact for tomorrow, we've got rain and wind in Miami, also in Tampa and Orlando, so a lot of problems here as far as the airports are concerned. Of course, Palm Beach Airport shut down earlier today, and there's going to be a lot more of that going on, we think, during the day tomorrow. It's going to be very difficult to get out of town. Although the winds will be calming down, it will still be quite rainy, we think, through much of South Florida. So a real mess in South Florida through tonight and right into tomorrow, then things getting a little bit better as we approach the evening hours on Friday.
And hopefully a lot of people have been preparing for this storm. I know there wasn't much time, but again, now is not the time to get out there and drive in this mess because as you saw from the radar, a lot of rain and strong gusty winds are going to be a big concern through the area as we go through the night.
And in South Florida, people have been evacuating all day, certainly a good move. And when we return, hurricane expert Dr. Steve Lyons will join us.
He is going to be giving us a closer look at Katrina and again tell us how it's going to be impacting your plans coming up this weekend.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Welcome back here to PM Edition and our continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina.
And joining us once again, it's hurricane expert Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, we've heard about the rain and the wind, but there could be some positive impacts with this storm as well.
Well, what we're seeing is an interesting feature here, Carl, and it's helping control which way the system's moving, which is west right now. But here it is down here. But notice this big ridge of high pressure in the upper atmosphere. It's coming around here with the air and sinking on the north side of the circulation. And that's good news for those of you in Central and North Florida, because look what's happening to the rain on the north side of the system. It was way up here. It's shrinking to the south. And now we've got rain basically near the circulation center and all to the south. So it looks like basically south of Lake Okeechobee is primarily the area for heavy rain overnight as the system moves to the west, nothing to the north. We hope that continues, and we think it probably will. So the heavy rain will be near the circulation center and to the south, including the Florida Keys. But to the north, that sinking dry air is going to keep it relatively dry, we think. In the meantime, the thing is making landfall near Fort Lauderdale tonight. Still some heavy rain bands coming in. You can see circulation starting to get a little less organized as it moves inland because of the land area, but there's still a strong band of heavy rain right there in Miami. You're getting smoked with some very strong winds and some strong rain right now. Those winds are gusting, and they could cause some power outages there over the next few hours. Now here's the primary impact from wind, we think, other than some minor damage from wind. Numerous power outages possible right here along the coast, including northern Miami, Fort Lauderdale area up to Boca Raton. Power outages likely a little bit farther inland and north and south, and then as it spreads inland, power outages are possible over the next few hours as it continues to move to the west at about 6 or 7 miles per hour. Where it goes from there, we think, is across Florida, not a long trajectory, but it will weaken to a tropical storm as it does so, come out off the coast as a storm, reemerge, and have a chance to come back as a hurricane. And we think it could be a hurricane making landfall somewhere in the Florida Panhandle there in about 60 hours or so. That would be sometime early Monday morning. The timing on this is still uncertain. The remainder of the tropical Atlantic is quiet, so let's get back to Carl and Jennifer.
Well, we are not the only ones feeling the impacts of a tropical system.
Half a world away, a typhoon is whipping up waves. We'll tell you where, coming up.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
While we focus on Katrina here in the U.S. and Japan, all eyes are on a pretty strong typhoon. You can see the huge waves it created this morning. Tokyo has had wind gusts up to 90 miles an hour, as well as some pretty heavy rainfall.
And we'll take you around the other side of the world and show you exactly where the system is. It is now off to the east-northeast of Tokyo and moving in that direction. The winds were around 100 miles an hour when it moved into Tokyo. Obviously some very big waves there and certainly some wind damage as well. Winds still 105 miles an hour. It is now moving northeast at around 14 miles per hour.
And again, back here in the States, we're dealing with Hurricane Katrina as it comes on into southern Florida right now.
And here's the very latest on the system. It is now moving inland into Broward County, northeastern Miami-Dade County. Very heavy rain with the system in South Florida, and there will be quite a bit of wind as well.
We'll have much more on Katrina as we go throughout the night, so make sure you stay right here.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Katrina making landfall this afternoon as a Category 1 hurricane and tearing up South Florida. How much damage has this hurricane caused, and what is still to come? I'm Mike Bettis live in Palm Beach, Florida. I'll have a report straight ahead.
And coming your way next, where Katrina is right this minute and where this mega rainmaker is headed. And blowing winds turn sand into sandpaper in Pompano Beach. These women covering their faces against the stinging combination. Oh, what a night it has been. Hurricane Katrina already making a name for itself, and it is super soaker. Hi everyone, this is our continuing and expanded coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Alexandra Steele.
And I'm Paul Goodlow. Well, the hurricane came ashore between Hollandale Beach and North Miami Beach. We've seen reports of powerful winds. We're talking gusting to 92 miles per hour at the Port Everglades area, 82 miles per hour in Fort Lauderdale, and 62 miles per hour in Miami. We've had 2 deaths from people being crushed under falling trees. And right now, here's the 11 p.m. advisory on still Hurricane Katrina. Winds minimal hurricane strength, 75 miles per hour, moving to the southwest at 8 miles per hour. And looking at the radar with the latest wind gusts, you can see we're still talking about freeway speed wind gusts here in Miami, as well as Fort Lauderdale, even up towards the north in West Palm Beach. Seeing some rain just moving past you, but winds still gusting 37 miles per hour. Alexandra?
All right, thanks, Paul. Well, let's get right into our team coverage, of course. And meteorologist Mike Bettis standing by live from Palm Beach, and storm tracker Jim Cantori in Fort Lauderdale tonight. Jim, let's start with you. You know, earlier tonight I heard you say this is the worst Fort Lauderdale has seen in quite some time.
Yeah, no question. I spoke to a couple people today. I said, you know, you went through Aaron way back when. You went through Francis last year. And now you've gone through Katrina. Which one was the worst one? They said, oh, definitely Katrina. The tree limbs were huge. We've had more power outages in the county with this one than anything. And there's been a lot of buildup as well in this area, too. A lot of newer structures that have been built to code. So the good news is we haven't seen any structural damage, and that certainly is interesting. And, you know, guys, as I show you the wind gust tonight, I think it's going to be even more interesting is the fact that the highest wind gusts actually occurred down to my south after landfall. A strengthening storm upon landfall. Interesting story, interesting situation here. Look at this, 95 Key Biscayne. Let's look at some of these. That's the wind gust there. 92 at Port Everglades, 87 in Virginia Key, 86 in Miami, and 82 here in Fort Lauderdale after landfall. Again, amazing. A storm coming onshore, strengthening and holding together very, very well. Pictures around here, again, showing mainly the folks dealing with the wind earlier on today. We had them just out in droves on the beach. I couldn't believe how many people were in the water, and boy, did conditions go downhill in a hurry. Thank goodness nobody got hurt and they got under the water in a hurry. So really an amazing storm. It's almost like the interaction with land helped to strengthen and consolidate that eye, and an eye in a center of circulation which continues to remain strong tonight. That's a bad thing. Well, let's go find out how they're doing up in Palm Beach County. Mike Bettis, you talked to us last half hour, and you were saying how it's actually gotten worse here a little bit with some of these outer bands coming in. Is that still the case tonight, sir?
It's still very windy right now, Jim. Pretty surprised that we haven't seen our winds slack at all here through the evening hours, and so we'll continue to see that, we think, until Katrina completely pushes west of us. But let's talk about what one of the true stories is with this storm, the rain. If you've been watching us on the Weather Channel all over the past 2 days, we've all been talking about the huge threat for flooding. Tale of two different storms, really. You head south of that eye and south, so say where Jim is, down toward the Keys, heavy amounts of rain and flooding. We've had rainfall rates 3 to 4 inches an hour, so flooding and flash flooding occurring there. But if you had, say, from where Jim Cantori is in Fort Lauderdale and then go north, almost completely dry. How much rain have we picked up here in West Palm Beach? Not even 4/10 of an inch of rain, whereas areas far south of us may, before this storm is over, pick up over 10 inches of rain. It is really going to be an incredible story with the flooding, especially the southern tip of Florida. As far as what's happened here in West Palm Beach, the streets basically deserted tonight. No one should be out. We're out here showing you what the conditions are like so that you don't put your life in harm's way. We have a lot of power outages in Palm Beach County. Over 100,000 customers are without power right now. A lot of street lights are out. We have a few areas where maybe we've got a tree down here or there, but certainly we're going to try to get the power on as quickly as possible. FPL will be out there tomorrow, I'm sure, surveying the damage and trying to make sure that everyone can get electricity very quickly. But a very interesting storm here in West Palm Beach and the Palm Beach area, Paul and Alexandra, and everyone very thankful here that it could have been a lot worse, and we escaped almost unscathed.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. Well, you know, as you might expect, Katrina is impacting schools, certainly across South Florida.
In fact, here's a list of school systems closed tomorrow due to Hurricane Katrina. We're talking about schools in Broward County, Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach County, even St. Lucie County as well.
All right, keep it right here as we continue to track Hurricane Katrina. Want to talk about Katrina's projected path. Now, our hurricane experts been talking about this all night tonight, what we expect it to do, cross the Florida Peninsula and then re-emerge in the Gulf of Mexico, the warm water there, re-intensify, move north, and then make a second landfall, potentially with more even of a punch than what we saw tonight in the Florida Panhandle, and then Paul, affect areas in the southeast, Atlanta, through much of South Georgia.
And a lot of rain right now falling in South Florida. In fact, the center of circulation of still a hurricane is still giving heavy rain to parts of South Florida. Winds still gusting. We're talking freeway speed. In fact, let's take a look at the bottom line of the storm. The center is still moving across South Florida as a hurricane. Strong wind gusts talking 50, 60 at last hour, 80 miles per hour. Local flooding a huge concern. Some areas, as Dr. Forbes mentioned, could see a foot of rain, and Katrina will move back to the Gulf and strengthen as we head towards the weekend.
All right, we're not done with Katrina yet. Dr. Steve Lyons is next with new information on Katrina's impacts, including who is most at the risk for flooding. That's next.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Our coverage of Katrina continues tonight, and it's hard to imagine that I left South Beach this morning with beautiful turquoise blue waters, a few clouds, a little drizzle. And what's happened in Miami-Dade County tonight is incredible. We've had 6 inches of rain in South Miami. The Dolphin Expressway at 97th Avenue has collapsed around the Doral area. No reports of injuries thus far. And we have had a 95-mile-an-hour wind gust at Key Biscayne. An incredible night for Miami-Dade County. All right, will it wind down there? Yes. Let's find out when with our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. Steve, when are things going to finally wind down for Miami-Dade and Broward counties?
Well, the rain is still coming in, and that's not going to wind down till early morning hours or even after that, with some bands still coming in from the south and southeast. The wind will taper off rather quickly overnight, and that's good news. Here's the latest information from the Hurricane Center. Now, it's still a hurricane. It's been over land a while, but still a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane. But we expect it to drop to tropical storm strength over the next few hours as it comes toward the southwest coast of the Florida Peninsula here. Moving right now southwest at 8, and when we look at the radar imagery, it looks like it's taking a little bit of a jog at the last minute here toward the west, just a little bit. And that's going to put it offshore here in not very many hours. With this current motion, it'll be offshore here in about 4 hours. And if that's the case, it has a chance to start to redevelop in 4 hours and then take a track basically back toward the west-northwest. But you can see here the stronger wind area is in this pocket right here, and that's pulling away from Miami. So the wind in Miami is going to go down rather quickly. The waves are starting to drop away, as is a surge. But there's still some heavy rain in South Miami, and that's where the problem we've had the last 6 hours. That area in South Miami, including Coconut Grove and down toward the Prine area and extreme eastern portions of Kendall. So that's going to last another 3 or 4 hours with some more rain beyond that. So this tree and power line potential is going to basically be moving off toward the southwest and then dropping away from Miami here shortly. But the rain is going to be continuing overnight. In the meantime, the circulation is going to come offshore, re-strengthen, and head back to the north. Back to you in the studio, Paul.
Yeah, thanks. That's our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And we're still watching how Katrina is going to impact travel, impacting right now. It will continue tomorrow as well. Let's talk about the airports. Many closed in South Florida. I expect them to slowly try to reopen tomorrow, depending on how much rain and also, more importantly, the wind, how that continues to diminish overnight and tomorrow. Fort Lauderdale, Miami, all being affected, all closed right now. Could be slowly opening tomorrow. Even Tampa, St. Pete, open right now, but you could be affected tomorrow as Katrina moves back out to the Gulf of Mexico and is still affects travel. Let's take a look at the radar right now. Still winds gusting. We're talking freeway speeds in Miami, 56 miles per hour. Again, as Dr. Lyons mentioned, the eye will continue to push offshore right now, moving towards the southwest around 8 miles per hour. After that, we'll look for the storm to recurve back towards the north and head towards the Florida Panhandle. So we're still concerned with travel all across the Florida Peninsula. Interstate 95, heavy rain tonight, more heavy rain tomorrow morning. We should see a slow clearing as we head throughout the day, and also the further north you head, well, the better driving it is. So if you're traveling northward, go ahead and do it tomorrow across the Carolinas. No problems there. Let's also take a look at the west coast of Florida, because this is where the bulk of the heavy rain is right now, basically south of Alligator Alley, which is this stretch of Interstate 75 here. We're talking some areas could pick up easily 8 to 12 inches of rain. We're talking about a foot of rain from the storm. And again, it continues to push offshore tonight and then curve back towards the north. As you travel north on Interstate 75 tomorrow, perhaps thinking about leaving parts of South Florida, well, you know what, it's going to be slow go across much of the region until you head up towards the Atlanta area. And throughout Georgia, you should be clear sailing across Interstate 75 tomorrow. And then towards the Midwest, different problems. Let's talk about this severe weather. Yeah, not associated with the tropics. This is a vigorous cold front coming out of the Rockies. Good news is bringing some rain where you need it, but also giving you problems on the roadways. Interstate 35 around the Twin Cities, more problems tomorrow, even tonight. Thunderstorms are trying to pop up there. Some of these strong and severe thunderstorms across the plains, Nebraska and Kansas, will continue to dump rain in areas that have seen flooding from last night's rains. We're talking many areas picked up 8 to 10 inches yesterday, and we have more storms popping up and giving us heavy rains now. Again, flood watch is widespread across parts of Kansas and Nebraska. Kansas City, you're also looking for a very wet ride to work or school tomorrow morning. Alexandra?
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Again, another look right now at Hurricane Katrina, where it is and where it is moving. Again, in Miami, especially Miami, Miami-Dade County, a flash flood warning until 1 o'clock. Still some very strong winds, 80, 90 mile per hour wind gusts. Now watching this traverse the Florida Peninsula, but then it is not over. We're going to watch this re-intensify in the Gulf of Mexico early tomorrow morning. Head north, make a second landfall as well as we head toward the end of the weekend. It's going to be an interesting weekend, that's for sure. Some of you looking out a washout definitely in the southeast. We're going to walk you through the next 7 days coming up, but first another look at Katrina's bands of rain.
Welcome back to our special coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Scenes tonight from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The streets are clear as Hurricane Katrina came on shore around 6:30 Eastern time as a minimal Category 1 hurricane, but still quite a powerful storm. Wind gust 90, 95 miles per hour across some parts of South Florida. It is still churning across the southern tip of the state, dumping in some places perhaps a foot or more of rain. And again, the main concern with this hurricane is the rain and the flooding. The following counties in South Florida are under flood watches: Broward, Charlotte, Miami-Dade, and Sarasota. Again, the big concern is not only in South Florida, but as we take a look at the track of the storm, we could see concerns further north as we head across the southeast, Alexandra. Again, this weekend could be, again, watching another landfall of Katrina.
Absolutely, but you know, tonight, just imagine, a lot of us, you know, not there. Maybe you're in Phoenix or Boston or wherever you're watching us from. It's dark, the power's out in South Florida, so you kind of don't know what's happening. So it's certainly scary there. If anyone is watching from that region, just know it is pushing westward. Certainly clearing conditions only going to get better for you. What could happen, and again, our hurricane expert talking about this all through the night, it's going to move offshore by tomorrow morning, go and re-intensify in the very warm Gulf of Mexico waters, and then move north, come ashore a second time, making a second landfall, potentially with even more punch, stronger winds, and even more rain into potentially the peninsula here of Florida, the Panhandle, and then affecting the southeast. So still a lot to come with Katrina. We're not really washing our hands of it just yet. Tomorrow, very strong thunderstorms expected, not Katrina related, but if you're watching us from St. Louis or Kansas City or Little Rock, you will be impacted. Cold front pushing into a very moisture-laden atmosphere, firing off these storms. So the potential for tornadoes, a very strong wind, so travel really tough through this area. For tomorrow, ample sunshine watching us through the Bitterroot Range. Beautiful conditions for you. Saturday into the Intermountain West, again that monsoonal moisture firing off predominantly in the afternoon. So maybe you're hiking or biking, you're in Boulder or Aspen or Telluride enjoying it. Taos even further south, a little wetter conditions for you, and even some rain in West Texas. And certainly temperatures have been so hot in Texas that rain really will feel good. Again, here comes that front moving into the Ohio Valley on Saturday, firing off those storms. Saturday in Saratoga, the $1 million running of the Traverse Stakes. Not going to be a sloppy track, but if you're going to the track on Sunday, it will be. There comes that wet weather. On Sunday, watching a more powerful and potent storm push into the Pacific Northwest, traverse the country, predominantly the northern tier of it. By Wednesday, you can see wet conditions as well in the Northeast tomorrow. And of course, this coming Monday, the U.S. Open tennis starts in Flushing Meadows. So looking at a few wet days potentially, especially midweek next week. As we head toward Thursday, dry skies in the southeast. Temperatures certainly very hot in Texas, but cooling down across the northern tier of the country. Don't go away. More after
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Right now, Hurricane Katrina is blamed for at least 2 deaths. One man died when a tree fell in his car with him sitting inside of it.
A pedestrian also died when a tree fell on him as well. Now, more than 412,000 are without power tonight. Katrina made landfall near Fort Lauderdale at around 6:30 p.m. tonight. You know, no doubt about it, things are certainly cranking up in the tropics, and we're also talking about the Western Pacific.
That's right, we're talking about Japan. Tokyo, you will feel the impacts of Typhoon Mawar. Typhoon, just like a hurricane, except it's in the Western Pacific. Now, the rough seas are battering the island right now, and the heavy rain and wind also halted flights in and out of the nation. Japan was struck last year, get this, by a record 10 typhoons and tropical storms.
All right, Paul, let's take a look right now at some rainfall totals that we've seen since 10 p.m. Tamiami over 7 inches, Miami 2 inches, Fort Lauderdale, and all of these places except Miami have stopped reporting.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Well, Hurricane Katrina is making her mark in South Florida with plenty of rain and strong winds.
Fort Lauderdale got battered with powerful winds as the Category 1 hurricane slowed offshore and increased in strength. As you can see here, trees are being toppled by Katrina's winds. And Hurricane Katrina definitely is impacting travel. The Fort Lauderdale airport is closed. It shut down at 7 tonight. Miami Airport, well, they canceled more than 85 flights and closed after 8 tonight. So call if you're flying out tomorrow morning out of any of the South Florida airports. And also the Port of Miami is closed to all vessel traffic right now. And this is definitely not a night for travel, folks. So we encourage you to stay off the streets and take shelter throughout the entire duration of the storm. But the good news is we still have our colleagues covering the storm for you. Our coverage begins with our storm tracker, Jim Cantori.
You know, and Jim, every hurricane experience is different. Talk about with Katrina, what's been most memorable to you so far?
I think the fact that even as the storm came ashore, we had winds just picking up, and it's just like, what's going on with this thing? It's intensifying, even though a good chunk of it is already on landfall. And again, that's always a worst case scenario when you have a strengthening storm that makes its way onshore for 2 reasons. And in this case, the second one holds out. Number 1 is the fact that it's going to do worse damage than you anticipated. Number 2 is it's going to hold together. And in case it gets a chance to reemerge, we got problems because it's going to strengthen quicker once it gets on the other side, and we think Katrina will do that. You can see the breezes are still up tonight here in Broward County. Obviously a far cry from where we were. Enough so earlier this afternoon that we couldn't do broadcast. But we did get a chance to get out and kind of give you an idea of what happened as Katrina came in with a vengeance. It is 6 o'clock Eastern time. We are dealing with the eye wall of Hurricane Katrina. Palm limbs like that down on power lines. We got a lot of power outages here in Broward County. The airport shut down as well. Wind and rain continue with Katrina here at 20 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. Look at this, sand running up the beach, even as little sand that's showing here, running between these 2 buildings and just piling up on top of the brick. Just one of the effects on how the wind constantly reshapes the beach. The winds here are so strong, they're taking the sand from the beach and pushing it with the water all the way into the parking lot. It's 6:45 now. We've got a little protection from the wind right here. So much for a center of circulation and a calm eye. That's not to be found with Katrina. Winds continue to howl here, and as you can see, as far as these aluminum gutters and fascia board are considered, Katrina was no match for it. It's 7:45 in the evening here, and we continue to deal with the eye wall of Hurricane Katrina. Winds gusting over hurricane force at times. Power is out all over Broward County. And I can't believe how strong this wind is. It is bringing up any bit of sand it can find and just sandblasting all of us here. We can't broadcast, we can't get the dish up, and it's no surprise here with the kind of winds the way they are. But amazingly, 2 hours after landfall, we are still dealing with this kind of wind, with a storm that just barely became a hurricane before it moved onshore. Nothing worse than an intensifying storm, no matter how small it is, upon landfall. Oh. Yeah, that one hurt a little bit. In addition to that rain pelting, there was also quite a bit of sand. I mean, wherever the sand came from, it obviously was the beach. It made its way around these buildings. You really couldn't walk around without getting nailed with the sand, whether it was rain-accompanied sand or just the sand itself. It was a painful time to be walking around this area, especially about 4 hours ago. Well, let's bring in meteorologist Mike Bettis. He's up the road a piece in Palm Beach. And Mike, obviously you went through the worst of Ivan last year, and now that you've gone through this, there's obviously no comparison. But like Alexandra asked me, I want to ask you, was there anything that you didn't expect with this storm that may have caught you off guard a little bit?
Well, I think the one thing that has been so interesting where we are here in Palm Beach County, Jim, is it's been a dry hurricane. I mean, we really anticipated some heavy rain to come in here, and if you kind of take it and think of it as a donut, just cut it right in half. It was the northern half that was just wind, hardly any rain. We only picked up 0.4 of an inch of rain, and then southward where you are, Jim, it was nothing but rain, and it looks like you're probably going to deal with a little bit more flooding. Have you ever been in a dry hurricane before?
I have. As a matter of fact, and interestingly enough, it was Hurricane Aaron, not on the east side of Florida, but when it came into the Panhandle. Bill Keneally was in Pensacola, which is where it came in, but I was over in Gulf Shores, Alabama, where we were in the sunshine and actually swimming in the waves by the time the sun set that night. So amazingly enough, that storm came in as a Category 2, but the west side of it was completely dry and actually completely wind-free as well. So we can get some lopsided storms, and I really think it's those storms that play the tricks on you the most. Those are the ones that do the most unexpected things, like this one, for example, holding together and producing the wind gusts, 82 miles an hour at Fort Lauderdale, 95 at Key Biscayne tonight. Again, well after the storm has come ashore. And that's what interests us the most. What is this thing going to be once it heads toward the Panhandle? Any guesses, Mr. Bettis?
Well, you know, anybody's guess what this thing is going to do. You know, one thing about the Panhandle up there is that they don't have a lot of protection from flooding or storm surge, because from, you know, basically the roads down to the beach, it's an elevation change in some spots of a foot at best, and so they are very susceptible to storm surge there. So we'll watch this storm very closely as it makes its approach potentially toward the Gulf Coast there and maybe even the Panhandle of Florida. Here in Palm Beach County, at times it's been a wet and windy night. There's nobody on the streets tonight. It's basically a ghost town. Everyone should be in their homes. That's the best place for you to be right now, or in the shelters. And I think a lot of people took the storm very seriously, although they didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it. They went through the hurricanes last year, and so very much on their minds what they needed to do with this system. Let's talk about not only just the wind that we've had here, and at times we've measured the winds right on the beach at 55 miles an hour, but maybe the lack of rain. I want to show you some of the radar estimated rain totals from Katrina, and it's just such an interesting story. In Miami, estimated at 2.84. That's as of 10 p.m. South Miami, big time difference there, 6.28 inches of rain, and we're adding to that right now. But where we are, as we were mentioning, dry hurricane, we didn't even pick up 0.4 of an inch of rain. Alexandra, I mean, I cannot even tell you the last time I was in a storm that we didn't even pick up a half inch of rain. But a lot of folks here, I think, in Palm Beach are very thankful that we not get the rain that we were expecting, and so very minimal threat at this point for flooding in this area.
Oh, that is good news, Mike, isn't it? Thank you so much, Mike, and of course thank you to you too, Jim Cantori. We're going to watch these two men go from where they are now, I would imagine in South Florida. We're going to watch them be poised right here. Why? Because we're going to watch the storm get off the coast, potentially intensifying the Gulf Gulf of Mexico and then head north. But before it does, take a look at some of these rainfall totals. Mike just talking about the rain and the disparity between where we haven't seen much but where we have. And of course, South Florida really getting hit the hardest locally, 6 to foot of rain in some of these areas. So really big time flooding potential. All right, let's talk about Hurricane Katrina, where it is and where it is going. And Paul picks up with the latest stats. Paul?
Well, let's bring in the latest info frame on Hurricane Katrina as of 11 p.m. Again, still winds, minimal hurricane, 75 miles per hour, moving towards the southwest at 8 miles per hour. Doesn't look quite that intensive on the satellite, but if you take a look at the radar, you can see, again, we still have the clearly developed eye that continues to move on towards the southwest. It should reemerge back in the Gulf of Mexico, back over water, I should say, into the Gulf of Mexico, probably before your rush hour tomorrow morning. And then it has conditions favorable to strengthen. These are the sustained winds. Talking about in Miami, 40, 45 miles per hour right now, but take a look at the wind gust. They're still gusting. We're talking over freeway speeds, 56 miles per hour in Miami, and the rain, the heaviest, basically south of Alligator Alley, Interstate 75 in this area. Now, the concern here is for the storm to move back over water, the Gulf of Mexico. Conditions are favorable, and eventually this should stay as a hurricane and potentially strengthen as it moves northward, and that northward movement will take it, unfortunately, towards the Panhandle, perhaps sometime early Sunday afternoon. Alexandra?
All right, thanks, Paul. Well, we certainly have this covered, don't we? Just ahead, tornadoes also common with hurricanes. Our severe weather expert in-house standing by and talking about the risk from Hurricane Katrina. That is coming up next. Also, let's talk about power outages. In Broward County, 210,000 without power. Miami-Dade, 60,000, and in Palm Beach, 102,000. We've got more coming up right after the break. Here is Katrina. South Florida is facing a huge risk tonight of flooding with Hurricane Katrina, but not just from its rains. And to explain, we bring in our climate expert, Dr. Heidi Cullen.
Alex, the thing is, South Florida is basically a big swamp. In the past, when big rains hit the area, Lake Okeechobee would blow up, sometimes getting to twice its size, and just flood the entire region. But today, cities like Miami and Fort Lauderdale rely on a system of canals to get rid of floodwater, sending it out into the ocean or down to the Everglades. The thing is, these canals, which were built back in 1947 after a hurricane caused severe flooding, are already busy getting rid of water from Okeechobee. The fear is it could get dangerously high and put a lot of strain on the 75-year-old Herbert Hoover Dike. In fact, the dike was built as a result of the 1928 hurricane that killed 2,500 people to prevent Okeechobee from ever flooding again. Now, the bottom line is urban areas in South Florida are already going to see more than the 3 to 5 inches that they can actually handle, and the canals just aren't going to be able to get rid of water fast enough. The good news, Okeechobee hasn't seen nearly as much rain as we thought.
Well, we'll just have to see how much rain they really do get with Katrina.
Exactly.
All right, thank you very much, Heidi.
Thanks.
Paul?
Well, thank you, ladies. We're still watching Hurricane Katrina dump a lot of rain across South Florida. Anytime you have a tropical system make landfall, the risk of tornadoes is huge. In fact, let's bring in our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes. And Greg, I guess the good news is the tornado risk is low tonight, but not exactly zero. But what is extremely high ongoing right now is the flood threat across South Florida.
That's right, Paul. We could see catastrophic flooding. There could be places get 18, 20 inches of rain, and in metropolitan areas, South Florida. Not much rain falling over Okeechobee. One rain band going across there now. There's an isolated chance of a tornado in that rain band, and some of these that will work on shore later tonight. You see the eye of Katrina there working its way now across the Everglades. And the band that's off to its east has still very heavy rain, some rainfall rates in there, 4 inches per hour or so. That's down a little bit. It had been 5 to 6 inches, but it's continuing to fall over southwest Miami, places like Coral Gables, Kendall, Cutler Ridge, and down to Homestead, and more yet to come. And so this is going to be a real major problem. The gusts now are beginning to die down about 60 miles per hour. Paul?
Okay, thanks, Greg.
And when we come back, our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, back with more where Katrina is now, where it's going. Here's a radar picture of Katrina, and we are not done with Katrina yet. How about a second landfall? We'll tell you when.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
And good evening. A everybody. Our coverage of Katrina continues. Of course, it continues to cause problems tonight, that in the way of flooding. But let's talk about something that it hasn't done so far. And we haven't seen a lot of storm surge with this storm because it really hasn't gotten itself together until the last minute, until it came onto the coastline. But that doesn't mean that we will not eventually have storm surge. Let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, because we think the core of this thing will hold together, do you think there's a better chance as well that the next landfall will have a much bigger storm surge component?
Well, that's definitely possible, Jim. That storm surge depends on two things: the strengths of the winds that are moving onshore. In this case, it was only a Category 1, and where it hits. And where it hit tonight was not a very storm surge prone area, but where it's going to hit the next time could be. Depends on whether it's in Appalachia Bay or farther to the west. They're very different areas. But one thing we did notice tonight, we saw a lot of power outages. You say, well, why were there so many power outages there? Well, it really depends on the population and how many trees and how many homes are around there. And this hit a very populated area of West Palm Beach and Miami where more than 5 million residents are located. So high population areas, we always see more damage, always see more power outages. Here's the latest from the Hurricane Center: 75 miles per hour southwest at 8, and it's moving offshore here in a few hours. Let's zoom in on the radar imagery and see where it is. There it is there. You can see the image. It's going to come right over Everglades City and move offshore into the Gulf of Mexico in just a couple of hours. Still some heavy rain in South Miami and down near Homestead, and that's going to continue for the next few hours. We've gotten somewhere between 8 and 12 inches based on radar, 8 and 12 inches of rain, which in some areas is going to be very, very heavy rain and high water for the next few days. So be careful with that. Now, what's going to happen with the system once it comes offshore? It's going to come offshore and then take a turn to the north toward the Panhandle. As Jim was asking, is the surge going to be higher? Well, first of all, we think the hurricane is going to be stronger when it makes landfall here. The official forecast is for a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane. Over here, the surge is not typically that high for a given hurricane. Appalachia Bay, the surge can be huge for the same hurricane that we just had tonight. We would have had about a 10-foot surge as compared to a 3 to 5 foot surge. So very different circulations there. We can't tell exactly where it's going to hit yet. In the meantime, in the Caribbean, quiet tonight, but we're monitoring 3 low pressure centers, one here, a weak one here, and another one up here, and any one of those 3 low pressure centers could become our next tropical depression out in the Atlantic. So a lot of hot spots there, and we're in the prime of the season. You remember last year all those typhoons that hit Japan? We just had one hit Tokyo tonight, and that was about the same time we had landfalls in Florida, which we had tonight. What a coincidence. The good news, weather's improving in Tokyo. It'll be improving in Miami tomorrow. Back to the studio.
Oh, wow, that's amazing, isn't it? All right, still to come, more on Hurricane Katrina, of course.
That's right. We'll take a look at some of the most dramatic video of the night as Hurricane Katrina came roaring on shore, still only as a minimal hurricane.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Well, thanks for watching the Weather Channel Evening Edition on this Thursday night.
Our coverage continues of Hurricane Katrina, and here's the latest. 2 people are dead. Both of them died from falling trees from the wind and also the rain. And more than 1 million people right now are without power. Now, landfall was around 6:30 p.m. near Fort Lauderdale, but some of the biggest impacts are being felt right now in Miami.
And Paul, gusty winds are expected to continue overnight and into the morning. Heavy rain will fall for hours after that. And Miami doesn't need any more, with more than 6 inches falling already there today. The strongest wind gust so far, 95 miles per hour in Key Biscayne. Dolphin Expressway has collapsed at 97th Avenue in Miami, where there was construction taking place.
Again, with such gusty winds, expect some power lines being down. Again, your kids, your pets, do not let anyone outside before you, an adult, checks out the ground around your house or apartment. Very dangerous situation going on across South Florida with live power lines still being down.
And another look at where it made landfall near the Miami-Dade Broward County line.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Katrina coverage continues here on the Weather Channel, Hurricane Central.
Hurricane Katrina is the worst that we've seen since Camille, since Andrew. It could be one of the top 3 or 4 of all time. It's a Category 5, now bearing down on the Gulf Coast. This is Mike Seidel, Mobile Bay. We'll be leaving here soon as the surge comes in. More coming up.
The most powerful storm to threaten the Gulf Coast since Hurricane Camille continues to move closer to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. We'll have the latest on where Katrina is headed and when the storm will make landfall. Hello and welcome here to the Weather Channel. I'm Jennifer Lopez.
And I'm Carl Parker. We're in storm alert mode right now as one of the most powerful hurricanes we've seen in several decades threatens the Gulf Coast. Katrina is now similar in intensity to 1969's Hurricane Camille, but Katrina is larger.
Just got the latest right now. Again, the system is still with winds up to 175 miles an hour, but the pressure has been dropping some. It's now down to 906 millibars. The center of circulation is just over 180 miles away from the mouth of the Mississippi River. Again, that's across extreme southeast Louisiana. It is moving in a northwest direction, picking up a little speed up to 13 miles an hour.
Here's where the storm is going to go. The tropical storm force winds are already being felt along the coast. The winds will be getting worse as we go through the night. The center of the storm moving into eastern Louisiana or into Mississippi or possibly Alabama. That's where we've got a projected path right now. You want to keep in mind that the effects will be felt well ahead of the center of that storm, well to the east of the storm, and we could have hurricane force winds well inland, 150 miles to the north, as this is a very powerful storm, extremely dangerous storm. You need to get out of that region now. Well, the Weather Channel is keeping you ahead of this extremely dangerous storm.
And we have crews along the Gulf Coast tonight and this afternoon. Meteorologist Mike Seidel, he's in Mobile, Alabama. Now, Mike, tell us about the evacuations that are going on in your area, and what do you and your crew plan on doing when this storm comes on shore?
Jennifer, surprisingly enough, at this point, with the storm bearing down on the Gulf Coast, only voluntary evacuation for parts of Mobile County. That's the area south of I-10 and east of I-65 and Highway 45. They call that Zone 1 and 2. But I would assume that they'll be changed to mandatory later on today. Let's hope so. As far as us, we're going to get out of here. This will probably be, if not underwater, very, very dangerous out here. But there will be people out here in Mobile Bay. Let me bring in the executive director of the USS Alabama, the Battleship Memorial Park. This is Bill Tunnell. We talked to him during Dennis, but this is a whole different animal.
Yeah, it is. This is a major storm that everybody needs to be prepared or out of here for.
But you'll have people on the ship throughout the storm.
Yes, we do. We allow our employees and their immediate families to come here, but it also gives us emergency people on board who know exactly what they need to do, and so we're delighted they want to share with us their time away from here.
Well, the ship has been through Frederick, George, and Camille, and as we well know, it's not going anywhere.
No, the ship actually moved slightly in Camille in 69, but Frederick and George, nothing happened other than the park got flooded, in which we anticipate that'll happen again today. I mean, tonight, tomorrow.
Tonight and tomorrow. What about preps you've been doing? You told me earlier you started prepping back on Friday.
Yeah, we moved everything that we felt like was non-essential to our operation for Saturday and Sunday, and all the small displays, etc. Today we've been moving all movable things and clearing out the aircraft pavilion as much as possible. So the ship's actually built to ride out one of these things, so why not use it to the best of its ability?
It's a great idea. Well, you stay safe. We'll be checking back with you as we roll through this evening here on Mobile Bay. That's Bill Tunnell with the USS Alabama. As far as the weather here, it's windy. We have some storms lurking. We'll have those first rain bands in here later on this afternoon, if not then this evening. And then hurricane conditions here across Mobile and Baldwin counties developing late tonight and tomorrow. Jennifer and Carl, I-10, both directions looking good. So if you're heading I-10 east out of Louisiana, Mississippi, it's a pretty good trek right now. It looks like they're doing the speed limit over there.
All right, that is some good news. Thanks so much, Mike. Again, as we've been telling you throughout the day, we're watching that pressure slowly starting to drop, but it's still a Category 5 with winds up to 175.
Very dangerous storm. Here is the latest on Katrina right now, and as we look at the central pressure here down to 906 right now, you can compare these to some amazing hurricanes from the past. The Labor Day hurricane of 1935 was 892. Camille was 909 when it made landfall. Andrew was 922 by comparison. So this is a very, very dangerous storm. You can see it now working to the north in the visible satellite picture. We had some information from the buoys here about wind, but those buoys have been knocked out. The winds are picking up along the coast. We're getting up to tropical storm force now, and as the system continues to lift to the north here, we are going to see increasing wind, increasing waves. The waves now up into the lower 20s here offshore in south and east of Pensacola. Wave heights could be as high as 25 feet, maybe 30 to 40 feet near the center of the storm as it comes in, and that will be towards the middle of the day tomorrow. Let's talk about that path once again. Jennifer?
And the projected path still taking it in that northwest direction, coming very close to Louisiana, over into southern Mississippi, as well as into Mobile Bay. That would be where the center of circulation comes through. And then as it moves on land, a big concern with wind still and the potential for some inland flooding. So as Mike was mentioning, we're expecting conditions to go downhill around Mobile Bay later tonight. As you can see, this hurricane still offshore, but the winds are going to start to increase and the rain is also going to be pick up. So just to the east of the center of circulation, the worst part to be, with a threat of severe weather continuing. Carl?
Just ahead, we'll have much more on this exceptionally powerful storm.
And I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams live in Gulf Shores, Alabama. We just got our first band of rain here, and there is much more to come. Take a look at the Gulf of Mexico.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had better news for you, but we are facing a storm that most of us have feared. I do not want to create panic, but I do want the citizens to understand that this is very serious and it's of the highest nature, and that's why we're taking this unprecedented move.
Hurricane Katrina obviously going to be affecting residents along the Gulf Coast, but we just got a statement in that northern Alabama up into middle Tennessee, tomorrow night you will be underneath a tropical storm watch.
And hurricane force winds could be felt as far north as 150 miles from the coast. Those of you in Jackson, Nashville, and Cincinnati will be dealing with Katrina later this week. We want to turn now to our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes, and we will take a look at that in just a moment. First, let's talk about what has happened here. And in 1969, with Hurricane Camille, we had a terrible time along the Gulf Coast. Winds up to 200 miles an hour estimated. Central pressure 909 millibars. You can compare that to what we're looking at now. The pressure of this storm now is 906 millibars. So this storm is comparable to Camille. It is comparable to Andrew in terms of intensity, but it's a very large storm. Camille was a very small storm, and this one is huge, and it's going to cause some serious problems as it moves on in. This is the timeline here. We think the center of the storm will near the coast tomorrow morning, so you'll be feeling the effects through the night tonight, getting worse and worse through the night here in southeastern Louisiana. Could make a landfall here a little bit later in the day, towards the middle of the day, say around Mississippi. That is also a possibility, but you want to keep in mind that the effects will be felt well ahead of the storm and well to the east of the storm in what is known as the right front quadrant. So if the storm took a right-hand side of this track here, then it would be well along towards the east here, and the effects will be felt well inland as well. We want to go now to Jim Cantore. He has a report from Biloxi.
We're going to get to Jim in just a minute. First, though, we want to take you to Gulf Shores, Alabama. That is where we find our own meteorologist, Stephanie Abrams. And Stephanie, we can see the waves definitely increasing. We've had reports up to 10 feet in some spots. You've been there throughout the day, seeing what people have been doing, and now you're starting to feel the first rain bands, right?
That's right, Jennifer. As a matter of fact, we saw the clouds. Actually, we can show you the clouds if we just go a little bit this way. You can look at the ocean as well and see how angry it is. So we saw these dark clouds off to our east, and we're thinking, yeah, you know what, it's going to rain. It looks like it's going to rain. Well, it did. It came down very heavily, so we threw on the rain gear, and I have a feeling that I will not be taking it off anytime soon. Now, fortunately, the people here in Gulf Shores, they're getting ready, they're boarding up, they're gassing up, and they are definitely listening to the officials here. They have evacuated the beach, they have shelters open, and the folks here, they know what it's like. They dealt with Ivan last year, and fortunately, they didn't get a lot of damage to Dennis, but they still had to deal with Dennis, and you know what, they're actually still just finishing some repairs from Ivan.
We ain't taking no chances. Ivan took our building Back then we worked out a 12 by 24 trailer. We're just trying to get boarded up, not worry about it. Try to get everything done here and we can get home, take care of the family.
Now, the main concern here in Gulf Shore, as they keep talking about, is the surge. They are worried about all of this water coming ashore here. So Carl and Jennifer, we will continue to monitor the situation from here as long as it is safe, and then we are heading out as well.
All right, that is definitely good to hear that you're going to definitely be safe there. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
And we want to bring in our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes. And Dr. Greg, we've been talking about the inland impacts. They will be significant for many people. Can you tell us about that?
They sure will be significant and widespread by Thursday. The effects could be felt all the way to New England. Now, the next 24 hours very critical in terms of the path. Let's take a look. On Friday, we had this big high pressure system blocking Katrina. It was going west or even west-southwest. That high has shifted now over to Florida, and that is making the hurricane now currently go northwest, but it's going to begin then turning toward the northeast. That will spread those effects those directions. We'll begin to get a tornado threat later this evening and overnight, spreading across these red areas through tomorrow afternoon across parts of central and Alabama and Mississippi. Then we'll also have a wind threat. That will certainly be catastrophic just to the right of the eye as it comes onshore. And then power lines could be knocked down all through these blue areas in thunderstorm gusts, even a possibility of some power outages in these light blue areas all the way up into the Pennsylvania region. Then flooding, and that's often the leading killer from these tropical storms. 4 to 8 inches of rain possible inside these green shaded areas, and some bouts of heavy rain a little bit off to the east. Places like Birmingham and Cincinnati all the way up to Pittsburgh will have these flooding rain effects by Tuesday morning, coming up toward Nashville as that pushes up into Wednesday, coming into Cincinnati and Cleveland, and then continuing farther to the north and east. We'll keep you up to date on all of these details. Carl and Jennifer?
All right, thanks so much, Greg. And just ahead, we will have much more on Hurricane Katrina.
The storm continues to get closer to the Gulf Coast of the United States, and we'll find out when Katrina is expected to make landfall and how bad things can get.
Stay tuned to Hurricane Central for all the latest information on the storm. We will be back right after your local on the 8s.
We've been through Ivan, and we just had a miss with Dennis. People know what they need to do, and I don't think that you have to ask them but once, and they're ready to go. They understand the power these things have with them, and of course everybody is real somber when these things start coming around because we've had our share lately.
And some of the outer bands of the storm now beginning to move into the coast. We can look at that on SkyTracker radar. And we're hearing reports now of airports being closed in some areas.
They will start to be closed down into Gulfport, Mississippi, as well as over into the Florida Panhandle as we go through the next few hours, especially as we get into the late evening hours. We're expecting flights to be canceled out of this area and also ground delays throughout the southeast.
And welcome back to our special coverage of Katrina, now an extremely dangerous Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm Carl Parker.
And I'm Jennifer Lopez. A look at the weekly planner and talking about the inland flooding in just a bit. But first, we want to bring you the latest on the hurricane.
Here is the bottom line on our storm. Extremely intense, very large, capable of catastrophic damage. We are not overstating this, folks. Landfall will occur tomorrow, perhaps early tomorrow. Significant inland impacts. Let's compare this storm to some storms in the past. The pressure now 906 millibars. That is lower than Camille was when it made landfall, and a good bit lower than Andrew, which was 922. So this is a very strong storm. Let's take a look at the satellite picture now. Most dangerous part of the storm is what we call the right front quadrant of the storm. We think that is going to be moving up here towards Mississippi, eastern Louisiana. If it moved into those areas, there still would be plenty of effects well to the east of the center, effects well to the north of the center, so the effects will be felt tonight. And in fact, we do have tropical storm force winds moving in right now. We'll feel those hurricane force winds later tonight, and the hurricane force winds could extend as far northward as 150 miles. The damage along the coast we think is going to be catastrophic. There will be a surge of perhaps 25 feet, waves as high as 30 to 40 feet near the center of this storm. Jennifer?
You've heard us talk about New Orleans over into Biloxi as well as into Gulf Shores, but the inland area is a huge concern. Tropical cyclones definitely have a big impact on inland flooding. Flash flood watches have already been posted across Tennessee. In fact, northern Tennessee, or rather central Tennessee, northern Alabama, over into Mississippi, you are underneath a tropical storm watch as we go into tomorrow evening. Again, we're going to be expecting landfall throughout the day on Monday. Big impacts along the coast and definitely for the inland areas. We could be feeling hurricane force winds as far north as Interstate 20. We'll have much more on the hurricane as we go through the evening. Stay with us.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Welcome back to our special coverage of Hurricane Katrina. The winds now 175 miles an hour, Category 5 hurricane. It is now moving to the northwest at 13 miles an hour. We do have some watches to tell you about. The effects are going to be felt well inland here, and in fact we do have inland tropical storm watches for much of western and northern Mississippi, as well as northern Alabama, southern middle Tennessee. And this is anywhere from 7 p.m. Monday evening until 4 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. So not only is this going to be devastating at the coast, it is going to cause serious problems well inland as well. Quick check on the warnings here. We have hurricane warnings now from Morgan City to Alabama and Florida, the border. Jennifer?
Stay with us. The Weather Channel's hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, joins us in the next half hour.
Hey, Jennifer, we'll also update you on the evacuations here in southern Alabama and check in live over in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Meteorologist Stephanie Abrams, the latest on the increasing surf on those.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Hurricane Katrina is a monster. That's the only way you can put it. Wait till we show you the satellite photo of this storm. Plus, the surf is already up on the beaches of the Gulf Coast.
And the surf has been up since yesterday in Gulf Shores, Alabama. The rain has started to fall. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams with a live report next.
Katrina is now packing winds of 175 miles per hour, and landfall is now only hours away. The latest on Katrina is next.
Just an impressive satellite of the Category 5 hurricane. Hello and welcome here to the Weather Channel. I'm Jennifer Lopez.
And I'm Carl Parker. We're in storm alert mode right now as an extremely powerful hurricane, more intense than Hurricane Andrew, is now bearing down on the northern Gulf Coast.
Let's give you the latest right now on where the center of the storm is located, and that puts it about 180 miles to the south-southeast of the mouth of the Mississippi River. Again, the winds very strong, up to 175 miles, and it is moving in a northwest direction, up around 13 miles an hour.
Tropical storm force winds are already being felt along the coast. The center of the storm will be nearing southeast Louisiana tomorrow morning, moving more towards the coast of Mississippi, we think, towards the middle of the day tomorrow. That's where the catastrophic impacts will be felt, but the impacts will also be felt well to the east of the center and well to the north of the center, so conditions really going downhill tonight.
And the Weather Channel is keeping you the Weather Channel is keeping you ahead of the extremely dangerous storm right now. We're going to go to the Gulf Coast at this hour.
And we want to go to meteorologist Stephanie Abrams, who is live now in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And Stephanie, things have really been going downhill in the last couple of hours there.
Absolutely, Carl, and have been very quickly. Through the day, yes, we've seen the wind pick up here and there, but all of a sudden, we had a huge rain band move through, and we're still getting spritzes here and there. I'm telling you, this rain gear was put on, and I bet you it will not be taken off as we head throughout the next couple of days here. Let's show you that radar picture and show you exactly what we're talking about. We are starting to see that rain from Katrina already make its way here into the Gulf Coast from Louisiana all the way east to where we are located into Alabama, and that's just going to get intense. It's going to be coming down, it's going to be going horizontal, and it's just going to get really bad. Let's show you the Gulf of Mexico here, and if you're not familiar with what the Gulf looks like, this is not typical, people. This is a raging Gulf of Mexico, and that water will just continue to push ashore as well as we head throughout the next several hours. Now, Mike, our conditions are deteriorating. How are you holding up there in Mobile?
We're doing okay so far. We've got the wind slowly increasing. You can feel it out here on the pier over Mobile Bay. Mobile Bay extending out to the Gulf. A little darker out there. That's where those rain bands are, some of the same bands that are hitting Stephanie. And we'll see those arriving here in the next, say, 4, 5, or 6 hours. As we well know, New Orleans is in line for some rough weather from Hurricane Katrina. Thousands are pulling up and heading out of the Big Easy, and a lot of those are heading east on I-10, and we caught up with a few of those. They've been gassing up. We stopped at the gas station. Fortunately, the gas stations here along I-10 right now have plenty of fuel, but even the diehards in New Orleans have said, this is the one I'm getting out of town for.
Yeah, I'm really concerned because I'm not the one normally to leave. I normally would, stay the course, but right now it's pretty serious.
And that's a good way to put it, probably an understatement. And so far here in Mobile County, only voluntary evacuations. I really find that troubling, but we'll see how they, what happens from the EOC later on this afternoon and this evening. Mobile Bay behind me, winds are gusting at about 20 to 25 miles an hour, and we will be pulling up stakes where we're standing and getting into a higher elevation situation tonight, as we expect the worst in here certainly during the day on Monday. Jennifer and Carl, once again, I-10 right here across Mobile Bay is okay. There are some backups eastbound through the tunnel in downtown Mobile, but once you get through the tunnel, things are moving okay. And like I said, we've got gas at this point.
All right, that is some good news. Thanks, Mike. And Mike, listen up. We have new information in on the hurricane right now.
The pressure has dropped to 902 millibars, a staggeringly low number. Unbelievably intense hurricane here. And let's take a look at the very latest with Katrina. It is moving along towards the northwest, Category 5 hurricane with winds of 175 miles an hour. Actually, the winds now up to 184 miles per hour. Category 5 storm, the pressure has dropped to 902, the winds now up to 184. This is an unbelievably dangerous and intense storm, folks. You really do need to get out of this region if you have not done so already. Here's the visible satellite picture. You can see the storm about as well presented here as you will see in any hurricane, and it's moving again towards the north and towards the west. We think landfall is going to occur here, at least initially, in southeastern Louisiana towards tomorrow morning. If it happens that way, if it's a little farther to the right, it would be more towards the middle of the day. But do keep in mind that the effects will be felt across a large area. The winds already coming up here across the northern Gulf Coast. Let's talk about that forecast. Jennifer?
And again, as we look here around the New Orleans area, again, in the path of this storm, we are expecting the water to continue to rise up here to around 25 feet possible. The eastern track would really start to rise that water as well. And then again, the winds could be anywhere from 50 to 100 miles, and that would be sustained. As we go through the day tomorrow, we're going to be watching this storm. And as we head into the evening hours, we're going to watch it increase here. The winds are going to be felt as we head into tomorrow morning over this area, and then we're very well concerned across the region for the inland flooding. So the bottom line, extremely dangerous system, catastrophic damage, landfall tomorrow. Carl?
And once again, Katrina is a Category 5 hurricane. Winds now at 160 miles per hour. We'll have much more on Hurricane Katrina coming up in just a couple of minutes. Winds now still 175 miles per hour, 184 miles per hour at flight level. And we'll have much more on the storm coming up.
This is an opportunity in New Orleans for us to come together in a way that we've never come together before. This is a threat that we've never faced before. And if we galvanize and rally around each other, I am sure that we will get through this.
And welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina. We are in alert mode this afternoon as one of the most powerful hurricanes in Atlantic Basin history, comparable to Andrew and Camille, bears down on the U.S.
That's right. Winds are increasing up to 184 miles an hour. And usually on the weekend, oh, it's time to get out there to the beaches, a beautiful weekend along the coast usually, but right now we are finding Hurricane Katrina strengthening. As we look at the pressure on this system, again, the pressure is starting to drop. It's down to 902 millibars, so that has changed. We haven't updated it for you yet, but as we look at a 902 millibar hurricane, when Camille came through, it was 909, or when it was the strongest, it was 909, so obviously a very strong hurricane.
And the storm is headed right towards New Orleans. Storm tracker Jim Cantori tells us why New Orleans may be the most vulnerable city in the country.
When people think of New Orleans, they think of this. Not this. But this is a very real threat.
What the city would look like as a result of a Category 5 hurricane making landfall here is absolute catastrophic.
Well, New Orleans is extremely hurricane vulnerable, primarily because of all the water that surrounds it. Well, right now we're standing on the levee system, and this is Lake Pontchartrain, just to the north. The water here in Lake Pontchartrain is at higher elevation than is the city.
That's because the city is below sea level, and being surrounded by water, it would act like a bowl.
A worst-case scenario for New Orleans is a slow-moving hurricane that comes into the city that's probably a Category 4 or Category 5, produces a huge surge that tops the levee system and fills up the city. And because it's a slow-moving system, there's tremendous rainfall on top of that.
New Orleans does have an elaborate pumping system, capable of draining about an inch an hour of water out of the city. But with a direct hit from a major hurricane, the pumps would be overwhelmed.
FEMA has modeled this problem, and FEMA tells us that if a Category 4 or 5 hurricane made a direct hit on metropolitan New Orleans, we're looking at some 40,000 to 60,000 casualties.
And tremendous health issues.
The problem with a massive flooding like this is that the sewage system is mixed in with the water, so it becomes this giant cesspool of disaster.
The last major hurricane to hit New Orleans was Hurricane Betsy in 1965. A Category 3 at landfall, it caused significant flooding. But with the strongest part of the hurricane missing the city, it was far from a worst-case scenario. Emergency managers in the Army Corps of Engineers are well aware of the dangers and have been working for years to minimize the effects should the big one hit. One project is flood-proof bridges.
It's flood-proof because the bridge has no joints, it's totally sealed, it's tied into the existing flood walls. It's flood-proofed also because the water pressure will not uplift the bridge out of the canal when the water rises around the bridge.
10 of 11 planned flood-proof bridges are complete. The old bridges had to be sandbagged, which took time and cut off evacuation routes. Then there's the flood walls and levee system.
For the most part, we use clay for the levees because it's not permeable. It's less permeable than sand would be.
Currently, the Army Corps of Engineers is filling in the last gaps in the levee system in St. Charles Parish. But really, the only sure way to survive a direct hit to New Orleans is to evacuate. And with very few roads out, evacuate early. I'm meteorologist Jim Cantori.
And again, we've been concerned across the Gulf Coast. We just got information in the flight level winds up where they've been flying in this system is out to 184 miles an hour, that the winds at the surface 175. Here's the latest on Katrina, and Carl's going to tell us more.
And the eye is now 29 miles wide. Very wide eye there. The pressure down to 902 millibars. And we'll put that in perspective for you. Camille, when it came on shore, 909. Andrew, when it came on shore, 922. This is much deeper than Hurricane Andrew. Let's take a look at the satellite picture. You can see this very well-developed storm here. There's that very well-developed eye, which is now to the south-southeast of New Orleans. It is moving towards the northwest. We think it will curve around a little bit here. It's difficult to say whether it will be eastern Louisiana or Mississippi specifically, but we do expect that there will be catastrophic impacts where that eye comes on board. And if it does come in just to the west of Mobile, there could be a 20-foot storm surge in northern parts of Mobile Bay that would severely affect the downtown area, with water extending as far west as Broad Street. Jennifer?
As we look at the projected path from this system, we're going to be watching it make that northerly turn, and that takes it somewhere very close to New Orleans over into Gulfport as well as over into Mobile Bay. We'll have more on the projected path and when we expect the system to make landfall from our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. He's coming up next.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
This is supposed to be the worst one I've ever read about, heard about. You know, they're talking 155-mile-an-hour wind. We've never been through one like that.
And how long have you been here?
About 50 years, 55 years, something like that.
Welcome back. It is time now for the tropical update and the very latest on the monster storm that is now in the Gulf. I'm Carl Parker.
And I'm Jennifer Lopez. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, is here to bring us the very latest on the tropics. And Steve, how strong do we expect this storm to be as far as winds are concerned when it comes on shore?
Well, that's the thing that really matters. And right now it's 175 miles per hour. Is it going to be that strong at the coastline? Well, it's quite possible it's going to be that strong. We think probably the weakest it'll be is into the high Cat 4 range. The official forecast is still Category 5 at landfall, so expect a very, very devastating hurricane by early tomorrow morning. Here's a projected path here. You can see where it's been going. It's been wobbling back and forth, typical of very strong hurricanes, generally on a line toward the southeast Louisiana coastline. But we expect it to take a turn more toward the north in the next few hours. Now, if it doesn't take a turn toward the north, it looks like it's going to go just on the west side of New Orleans, which is the most devastating side if that does happen. Now, let's look at what some of the impacts are going to be here. First of all, wind is very high for Category 5. Rainfall, let's not worry about that right now. That's going to be an inland threat. But the surge and the waves are going to be huge. As a matter of fact, they're going to be so big they're deadly at the coastline. Now, where are those going to happen? They're going to happen right in this area. We still cannot rule out Mobile Bay and the extreme eastern portions of Alabama, but it looks primarily like a Mississippi, southeastern Louisiana, a landfall location right now. It's a large hurricane, though, and it's going to spread impacts all the way into Florida. Here's the type of damage we could expect from a Category 5. It could be even worse than that in a Category 5 of 175 miles per hour, which is an F3 tornado strength, believe it or not, except it's a very large circulation, producing a water rise of 20 to 25 feet. Locally, it could be higher than that, depending on where it goes in that right front quadrant. But that is deadly surge there. You cannot hide from the water. You can only hide from the wind. And that water will rise all the way up to Cedar Key, to that amount that's seen there. We have a couple of other problems here. High waves, and that'll be primarily in the western Florida Panhandle and the outer portions of Louisiana. Carl?
All right, thanks so much, Steve, and stay with us. There is much more to come.
And we leave you with the live look at the radar picture now from the northern Gulf Coast. Some of the outer bands beginning to move in already with tropical storm force winds.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina. The worst case scenario here for New Orleans is if the storm moves into the west, brings in a tremendous amount of water. Water level rise could be on the order of 20 to 25 feet. If it moves in more towards Mississippi, we're talking about potential for catastrophic flooding. There could be a flood of record on both the Kiln and Jordan rivers on the Wolf River near Gulfport. So it could be very, very bad indeed here in southern Mississippi. And in Mobile, there could be a water level rise of near 20 feet on the northern end of Mobile Bay. Here's the very latest on the storm. The pressure is now down to 902 millibars. It is a Category 5 storm with winds of 175 miles an hour. Very dangerous storm, and it's going to be moving in overnight and into tomorrow morning. Jennifer?
All right, stay with us. We will have much more on Hurricane Katrina just ahead.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Probably beginning tonight, the situation is going to start deteriorating fairly quickly. And again, it's not going to be wind, it's going to be water, more like a tsunami effect is what we've been told. And the low-lying areas are going to, those are the ones that's going to be a serious problem.
And we do want to make an addendum there. It is going to be water, but it certainly will be wind for a lot of folks, and very, very serious wind.
We can be looking at wind not only along the coast, but also for the interior areas up to I-20, perhaps even farther to the north.
Right. And welcome back to our special coverage of Katrina, now an extremely dangerous Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm Carl Parker.
And I'm Jennifer Lopez. A look at the next 7 days in your weekly planner, but first up, let's bring you the latest on Katrina.
And as we take a look at SkyTracker radar, you can see that some of the bands are already beginning to move in. We are already getting tropical storm force winds here in southeastern Louisiana. And as we consider the breadth of this storm, it's a very large storm, so no matter where it moves in, we're going to feel those hurricane force winds well off to the east of the center, and we're talking about 105 miles here. So if the center moved into New Orleans, the hurricane force winds could be as far away as Mobile. That's how big this storm is. Let's take a look at the stats here as far as the pressure is concerned. Look at the size of this thing also. This is Charlie by comparison. As we expand out a little bit and show you the size of our storm right now, it is much, much larger than Charlie. Charlie was a very small storm with very intense winds. This is also a very intense storm, but it's much larger. It's going to have a broad impact all across the Gulf Coast and well inland. Now, let's talk about the pressure. The pressure, 902 millibars. What is that comparable to? 909 was Camille. That was a devastating storm for Mississippi. 922 was Andrew. This is 20 millibars lower than Andrew. Unbelievable hurricane here. We don't think that it's going to be weaker than a 4 when it moves in. It may weaken, but probably not weaker than a 4. Right front quadrant here, that's where the worst of it's going to be found, and we're talking about very strong wind, devastating wind, high surge, a lot of waves, and all kinds of rain as well. Jennifer?
Let's talk about the threat of inland flooding. Again, we all remember Camille. Well, for inland flooding, we had over 250 fatalities. Hopefully everyone has heeded the warnings, evacuated, and tried to get to some safer ground. Here is a flooding concern. Flash flood watches as well as tropical storm watches have been posted across these areas for much of the southeast. Again, as the storm makes its way inland, we're going to be seeing the rain and the wind increasing here. Tropical storm force winds as well as hurricane force winds can be felt throughout the southeast up to Interstate 10 and Interstate 20 as well. The west quiets down, but the east is just going to be raging over the next few days with wind and rain with Katrina.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
And welcome back to our special coverage of Hurricane Katrina. There is the storm on radar. Some of the outer bands already beginning to move in. Of course, there is a threat for tornadoes. We're feeling tropical storm force winds here in extreme southeastern Louisiana, and it's going to get much worse as we go through the night tonight. And some of the effects are being felt as far north as the Atlanta area. Some extremely outside bands here moving on into the southern part of Atlanta, and there's going to be a lot more rain through all of the southeast right through the next couple of days here. As the storm moves in, it's going to cause catastrophic problems along the coast, but then well inland we'll feel hurricane force winds 150 miles from the coast, and we have tropical storm force warnings now in effect, or watches I should say, for much of Mississippi and Alabama. Huge event here for the entire southeast. Jennifer?
All right, stay with us. We have our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, joining us in the next half hour.
And Jennifer and Carl will also check SkyTracker, the latest, the early squalls now moving into Louisiana.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Hurricane Katrina gets set to take a big bite out of the Gulf Coast and inland areas too. We'll likely see hurricane force winds well inland. I'm Mike Seidel. We'll also check in with Stephanie Abrams over in Gulf Shores where the surf is up at this hour.
Absolutely, Mike. We are seeing some big waves here in the Gulf of Mexico, but you're watching Hurricane Central. We're going to keep you ahead of the storm and safe during Hurricane Katrina.
Katrina is now packing winds of 175 miles per hour, and landfall is now just hours away. The latest on Katrina is coming up.
Hello and welcome here to the Weather Channel. I'm Jennifer Lopez.
And I'm Carl Parker. We're in storm alert mode right now as an extremely powerful hurricane, more intense than Hurricane Andrew, is now bearing down on the northern Gulf Coast.
Just an incredible system. Let's give you the latest right now. Winds up to 175 miles an hour. The center of circulation about 180 miles away from the mouth of the Mississippi River. The pressure has been dropping, now down to 902 millibars. So a strong Category 5 hurricane. Again, it is moving in a northwest direction at 13 miles an hour.
So where's this thing going? Well, it's going to be going along towards the north here, towards eastern Louisiana and Mississippi, possibly Alabama, but you don't want to focus on that point. Of course, the impacts at the coast will be devastating, but the effects will be felt well to the east of the center, well ahead of the storm, and well inland as well. We do have tropical storm force watch areas all the way into northern Alabama and much of Mississippi.
And the Weather Channel is keeping you ahead of this extremely dangerous storm.
We have crews along the Gulf Coast, and this afternoon meteorologist Mike Seidel is in Mobile, Alabama, and meteorologist Stephanie Abrams is standing by live in Gulf Shores, Alabama. We begin with you, Mike. And Mike, have things gotten worse there in the last couple of hours?
The wind has picked up a little bit, Carl, but not too much. It's gusting up to about 20-25 miles an hour. We are seeing those rain squalls behind us, and they pass off just to our south across the lower end of Mobile Bay. Let's go to Sky Tracker right now, show you what I'm talking about, and we'll show you the bands coming in across southeast Louisiana, over there around Pensacola Beach, down towards the Dolphin Island area and Gulf Shores. Again, they're areas farther south than we are, but we will see some rain here in the next few hours, and each succeeding squall will have stronger wind gusts. Eventually, hurricane force winds will be felt here sometime on Sunday morning. Let's talk about the surge potential. Now, Dr. Steve Lyons, not only a hurricane expert, but a wave expert, and we could see a surge here in Mobile Bay up to 20 or even 25 feet. That's determined by exactly where the eye wall goes. The farther east it goes, the worse it will be. And we picked out 3 big storms. We know them. We don't necessarily love them, obviously. Camille, Frederick, and George. Camille was a Cat 5, but it was a smaller storm, and surge was 7.4 feet. The one that they remember as far as surge and damage was Frederick back in 1979 from 12 to 13 feet. But this one we're expecting 20 to 25 feet, and with something like that, we're going to have flooding in downtown Mobile as far west as Broad Street. Carl and Jennifer, again, we keep you updated here. We want to go over to the Gulf Shores area, Alabama. Stephanie Abrams is over there. And Stephanie, you've been there since yesterday. What a change on the beach as far as how much beach is left and how many people are left. What about the evacuation orders as of late this afternoon?
Well, of course, they have been evacuating the low-lying areas, and people really need to get out of here because that water, it's already, I'm going to walk back here to the beach and show you. The water's basically already come up to here, and as a matter of fact, wow, I just looked over to my right, and the water has come all the way up to the sidewalk. So you can only imagine what's going to happen as this surge comes in. Now, as we pan over to show you that water where the palm trees going all the way up those palm trees there, I don't know if you saw us our last shot here, but there were some people on the beach, and the police have shown up, and guess what? They have taken everyone off the beach, and they're actually standing here now to make sure that nobody will be on the beach so that they do evacuate this area because it is a dangerous situation. And speaking of evacuating, we will be leaving here shortly. Now, they are definitely ready for this storm, but of course, they had to deal with Ivan, and they're still rebuilding actually from Ivan.
We ain't taking no chances. Ivan took our building. Back then, we worked out a 12 by 24 trailer. We're just trying to get boarded up, not worry about it. Try to get everything done here and we can get home, take care of the family.
And the winds continue to pick up here, and you can see my shirt flapping, my pants flapping. And what's happening is with a hurricane, counterclockwise flow around a hurricane, we are on the north side of that. So if you follow your hand around like that, we should be getting an east wind. And guess what? The winds are coming in from the east, pushing west. And Carl and Jennifer, on my anemometer here, I got a gust of 26 miles per hour. It's the highest gust I've gotten so far.
And I'm sure it's going to only get higher and higher. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Again, let's give you the latest on this Category 5 hurricane.
And this storm is really one of historic proportions. Let's take a look at the numbers here. And 175 mile an hour wind. That's a Category 5 storm. Category 5 starting at 156. It's moving towards the northwest at 13. The pressure down to 902. That is comparable to Camille. That is actually lower than Hurricane Andrew. You can see the winds picking up here along the northern Gulf Coast. It's going to go downhill tonight. Some tropical storm force winds already being felt in southeastern Louisiana. Here is the bottom line on our storm. Extremely intense, very large, capable of catastrophic damage. Landfall tomorrow, significant inland impacts.
All right, let's look at the projected path, and the worst case scenario would for the center of circulation to just go west of New Orleans, west of Biloxi, and west of Mobile, because that's when you're going to be on that right side of the quadrant. And you'll deal with all the rain, all the strong winds, and again, catastrophic event across the area as we go through the night and through the day tomorrow. Carl?
And just ahead, we'll have much more on Katrina. Dr. Steve Lyons will be joining us in just a few minutes with details on just how bad the storm will be and for whom. Stay tuned to Hurricane Central for all of the latest information on this exceptionally powerful storm. We're back after your local on the 8s.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Storm surge most likely will topple our levee system. So we are preparing to deal with that also. So that's why we're ordering a mandatory evacuation.
And welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina. We are in alert mode this afternoon as one of the most powerful hurricanes in Atlantic Basin history, comparable to Andrew and Camille, bears down on the U.S.
Just an incredible hurricane with winds up to 175 miles an hour. Let's look at this storm. And again, the satellite picture showing the center of circulation just offshore of the Louisiana coast. It's about 180 miles away from the mouth of the Mississippi River. There you can see the eye, about 29 miles wide. It is moving in a northwest direction, and that takes the center very close to Louisiana and up along the northern Gulf of Mexico.
And New Orleans is very vulnerable to a hurricane because it lies below sea level.
And Jeff Morrow shows us what is happening in the city as Katrina churns towards shore.
Powerful Hurricane Katrina continues to head toward the Louisiana and Mississippi Gulf coastal areas, expecting a landfall here probably early or during the middle part of the day on Monday. The weather's only going to go downhill from here. Now, the main concern in New Orleans has been and continues to be flooding. The wind will be a big issue, obviously, and will cause damage, but it's the flooding that really could cause problems here, not only during the storm, but maybe for many days, even a week or so afterwards, because most of this city lies below sea level, and it's Lake Pontchartrain rather than the Mississippi itself that could supply most of the flooding water. We talked with some folks up along the Pontchartrain just a little bit ago.
And what happens, a lot of people come out here to take a look at it, which they shouldn't. They really should stay at home and away from this area.
Now again, there are mandatory evacuations here. They're trying to get as many people out of New Orleans as they possibly can before the hurricane starts making its main impact overnight tonight and on into the day on Monday. And here's what the mayor had to say about the situation.
This is an opportunity in New Orleans for us to come together in a way that we've never come together before. This is a threat that we've never faced before. And if we galvanize and rally around each other, I am sure that we will get through this.
So again, can't emphasize enough, this is an extremely, extremely serious and potentially dire situation here. Everybody should be evacuating if you possibly can, or find out where you can seek some shelter, particularly if you're in a low-lying area. Jeff Morrow in New Orleans with the Weather Channel.
Just an amazing storm. Yesterday we were talking about winds just over 100 miles an hour. Now they're quickly increasing up to 175.
Yeah, this thing has rapidly intensified. Before it moved into Florida, the day before it had winds of 45 miles an hour and then blew up right before it hit Florida, and now we are talking about a record hurricane. Let's take a look at the numbers here. The pressure is now down to 902 millibars, and that makes it comparable to Hurricane Camille, and that is actually much lower than Hurricane Andrew was, 922, when Hurricane Andrew came on board. This is a very large system. That makes it different from, say, Camille or Charlie, which were smaller systems. So not only is it very intense, but the impacts are going to be broad. Catastrophic wind as it comes in at the coast, but the wind will be felt well to the east of the center. The hurricane force winds about 100 miles out from the center. So even if the center were to come in near New Orleans, the hurricane force winds would be felt in Mobile. They will be felt well ahead of the storm, starting later tonight and right through the morning tomorrow, and then well to the north, 150 miles inland. hurricane force winds will be felt, and we have tropical storm watches, inland tropical storm watches, all the way into northern Alabama and through much of Mississippi. A lot of very high water here too. We're talking about water level rises on the order of 20 to 25 feet. There's the latest information from the hurricane hunters. The eye is 29 miles wide. Again, your pressure 902, and this is where we think the thing is going to go. It will continue along towards the north, but don't focus on that center because again, it's a very large system nearing the coast here tomorrow morning, continuing up into Mississippi towards the middle of the day tomorrow and then right into the evening, and it will be affecting a number of oil platforms, and that means gas is going to go up even more for many of you. You may want to fill up tonight. Here's the bottom line on our storm.
As we look at the bottom line, again, one of the most intense hurricanes on record. And again, it's capable of catastrophic damage. Carl was telling us about the increase in the winds that were expected through the night. Again, we expect the center to stay offshore for the next few hours, but then the wind and the rain are going to be getting closer and closer to shore. And as the system moves onshore, a big concern will be flooding. We talk about tropical cyclones and how much damage they do and leading causes of deaths. Inland flooding, a big chunk of this pie graph, and that is going to be a huge concern as the system moves into the southeast. Numerous areas underneath flash flood watches, numerous areas even underneath tropical storm watches with tropical storm winds expected across the southeast. So as we go throughout the day on Monday, again, anticipate the rain and the wind over much of the south. Carl?
Well, stay with us. There's much more to come. Dr. Steve Lyons will be joining us next with the latest on Hurricane Katrina. And again, if you are in the path of this storm and you have not evacuated, you need to do so now. Stay tuned to Hurricane Central for all the latest information on Katrina. We'll be back after your local on the 8s.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
We're not really too concerned at this point about the wind damage. Ours is mainly going to be from the surge, and basically from the word that we've received, we expect a pretty good high surge, and anybody in low-lying areas really needs to take caution and start getting out.
And honestly, the wind is going to be a very big problem as well. Welcome back. It is time now for the Tropical Update and the very latest on the monster storm that is now in the Gulf. I'm Carl Parker.
And I'm Jennifer Lopez. Let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. Dr. Lyons, we know it's a strong Category 5 hurricane, but why do we expect the impacts to be so devastating?
Well, one of the main reasons is because the circulation is so large, it's going to affect a lot larger area. Compared to Hurricane Charlie last year, I'm going to show you a diagram here in a little while that shows you a comparison of the sizes. It's much larger, it's more intense, and it's hitting a coastline that's much more vulnerable to surge than is the coast where Charlie hit. Charlie was the second most costly hurricane on our records. There you see the hurricane there, and it's moving basically to the west-northwest. It may be starting to turn north now. Let me show you a picture here. We're not absolutely certain of this yet, but we've been talking about this trough and the closure of that little dark line there. Watch the top of this flare northward there at the last couple of frames. See how it flares north right up there? Now let's look at a close-up of what the track is looking like right now. Here it comes out of the bottom of the picture, basically west-northwest. See that little turn toward the north? It's too early to tell for sure if that's the turn. We'll be monitoring this carefully, but it may be starting to turn more northward, so northwest and then north. It's very close to New Orleans and the Mississippi coastline. Those are the two areas we're most concerned about right now, but Alabama's not out of the loop, so here's our projected path. And of course, it's going to come over the outer islands of Louisiana. So Louisiana, Mississippi is the biggest potential impact, but Alabama, you're still in the problem area because this is a large hurricane and that right quadrant's going to come in. And also there's very large wave action on the Florida coastline as well. That's going to cause the water action to come way up. What do we expect the intensity to be? Well, right now it's a Cat 5. We don't think it could weaken any less than a Cat 4. We're expecting a Cat 5 at landfall, but you know, sometimes we think, how low is that going to go? Well, we don't think it's going to go very low. This is going to be a devastating hurricane indeed. This is a Category 1 type intensity. What do we expect from a Category 5? Catastrophe for structures that are not well built whatsoever, so it could be a real problem. Let's get back to the studio now with Paul.
All right, thanks so much, and stay with us. There's much more to come.
The latest on Hurricane Katrina is coming up next in just 2 minutes.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
And you are looking at New Orleans residents who are now streaming into the Superdome, trying to get away from what may be one of the strongest hurricanes to hit the U.S. coast in a very long time. And welcome back to our special coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Carl Parker.
Yeah, people along the Gulf Coast are preparing for this. Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Lopez. And again, let's give you the latest right now of the look of Hurricane Katrina. And we have reports of mandatory evacuations taking place along the Gulf Coast, even as far east as Cape San Blas, Florida. Here's the latest. Winds are up to 175 miles an hour. It is a strong Category 5 hurricane.
And we do not think that the storm will weaken much more than it has. It may drop down to a 4. It will probably not drop down to a Category 3 hurricane. So a very intense storm, a very large storm, which will have a broad impact. One of the most intense hurricanes in recorded history.
And we're here throughout the night to keep you safe and ahead of the storm. Stay with us. Paul Goodlow and Alexandra Steele are coming up next.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Katrina coverage continues here on the Weather Channel, Hurricane Central.
You're looking at wind and waves at Fort Walton Beach live as our Category 4 hurricane is making it onshore this morning in southern Louisiana.
And I'm Jeff Morrow. I'm to the north of Lake Pontchartrain here in Covington, Louisiana. Winds definitely gusting up to about tropical storm force. We've already had power out and we've already had some tree limbs snapping off. I'll have a live report here in just a moment.
Here in southern Alabama, tornado warnings are coming out fast and furious. Right now the wind is picking up as Katrina makes its move.
Well, good morning and welcome to our special storm alert coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Heather Tash.
And I'm Marshall Cease. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's take a look at what the stats are on Katrina at this hour. First, we take you to the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner, Louisiana. You're feeling the effects of Katrina this morning.
You know, these scenes here are rough, but it's going to turn a lot rougher as we continue through the morning hours as things continue to intensify. We do have advisories up here for Katrina along the coastal areas, both watches and warnings here for our hurricane.
Already have reports of 85-mile-per-hour wind gusts. That was at New Orleans at the Lakefront Airport. That was about an hour ago. Peak wind gust 114 miles per hour has been reported as well.
And we can give you the swath here to show you where it is headed. And certainly once we continue to see the system working on shore, we're going to have a lot of inland impacts coming from this system. You're going to find some very rough winds coming in here. Some areas already have sustained hurricane force winds, and we've been seeing some areas with winds that have been over 100 miles per hour.
Swath carries it into the Ohio River Valley by Wednesday. Need to look out in Louisville, Lexington, also Cincinnati, Ohio. We'll have more details on those impacts coming up a little later in the show.
Our team of meteorologists fanned out across the Gulf Coast to cover the arrival of Katrina. Jeff Morrow is in Covington, Louisiana. Storm tracker Jim Cantori is in Gulfport, Mississippi, and Mike Seidel is in Mobile, Alabama. Jeff, let's start with you. You moved north of New Orleans out of harm's way, but what are the conditions like in Covington right now?
They're getting worse. I can tell you that the power is off in most areas around here right now. There are still some sporadic areas. A lot of folks do have some generators, some of the local businesses and hotels, and so they're well prepared for that, at least temporarily, but a lot of the main power appears to be off. It wasn't our hotel when we got up early this morning. Just before I came out here to do this live report, got out of the satellite truck and we heard a big snap and looked up, and one of the big pine trees had lost a big limb off the top of it. That's going to start happening more and more as we get more in the way of tropical storm force gusts, and of course it'll go over hurricane force here as the eye passes by. Right now it appears like the eye may pass just to our east. Here we're looking down around the Kenner area and at some of the traffic early this morning, and I got to tell you folks, if you haven't evacuated by now, I think maybe the best thing to do would just be to wait this one out. We had our opportunity to get out. I know that the Pontchartrain Causeway closes when the winds get up over 45 miles an hour. I gotta believe that causeway is shut down now, so you can't come northbound across Lake Pontchartrain, nor would you want to. And so maybe it's best just to try to stay in and not be out on the roadways. As we head through the morning, there's going to be a lot of flying debris. The wind basically coming out of the east-northeast or northeast this morning here. It'll switch around more to the north, and that coming across Lake Pontchartrain could cause some big problems as it pushes that very shallow lake around and perhaps spills it over the levees. We're going to have to just take a wait and see on that. That's what everybody really is fearing at this point. Looking at the radar again, we are on the northwest side of the hurricane right now as it comes ashore down toward the Boothville area in the Mississippi Delta, but we'll have these spiral bands of heavy rain and very, very gusty winds as we get closer to that eye. Again, it looks like it may pass just east of New Orleans in our area, but we'll definitely be on the very strong western eye wall. Well, let's head a little bit farther to the east now. Mike Seidel standing by in Mobile, Alabama. Mike, your conditions going downhill as well, I imagine.
They are, Jeff, and you mentioned earlier about the ability of the wind to snap trees and limbs, and that's one of the reasons, one of two reasons we moved away from Mobile Bay and downtown Mobile. The surge, flood potential, and there's so many trees down there. Out here in suburban Mobile, out on 65, fewer trees, so fewer chances for debris to come flying through the air. We do have a tornado warning right now. We've had several this morning. This one is for Mobile and Baldwin counties until about 15 after the hour, including the Turnerville area in Citronelle. That's about where the cell is now. It's moving northwest to 25 miles per hour. Here's some pictures from early this morning as the wind has been whipping the flag and the trees out here, up here by the airport, Airport Boulevard and I-65. We've had wind gusts to almost 50 miles an hour, a lot of rainfall. The flash flood warning continues for all Mobile County until 8 o'clock this morning, and we're expecting storm totals upwards of 8 to 10 inches of rain. Again, this is just the fringe. The power is on, at least where we are here in Mobile. That will likely change as we get the real meat of the storm later on this morning and this afternoon. By the way, by tomorrow, it's all out of here, and the sun will come back out tomorrow for the cleanup and temperatures around 90. Kim and Nick, earlier I heard Jen mention someone paid a cabbie Marshall rather, paid a cabbie $1,000 to ride them from New Orleans up to Atlanta. We'll take $750 tomorrow for our trip back and carry him right to the airport. How about that?
That sounds good. All right, thanks, Mike. Dr. Steve Lyons coming up next, and any way you look at it, this is Hurricane Central. We have a bottom line for you.
Well, you know, certainly a very dangerous situation here. Katrina has weakened slightly, but still very intense, very dangerous here. Landfall is imminent. It is happening right now, and the impacts will spread north ahead of the center. You are watching the Weather Channel Hurricane Central. Much more with our coverage continues, including your local on the 8s.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Welcome back to Hurricane Central at the Weather Channel. Under storm alert mode as we watch the landfall of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Marshall Cease.
And I'm Heather Tash. A very dangerous situation this morning as we continue to monitor it. Working on shore right now, it does have some top sustained winds still of 145 miles per hour. Now that has weakened somewhat overnight, but again, this is still a Category 4 hurricane. Very dangerous situation through here. It is moving right now to the north at about 15 miles per hour.
And its barometric pressure is at 918 right now. Again, as Heather said, 145 mile per hour max winds, moving north 15, 70 miles south-southeast of New Orleans. That's all. And of course, we have meteorologists stationed throughout that area to bring you the latest on Katrina.
And Jim Cantori right now is in Gulfport, Mississippi. He filed this report.
And good morning, everybody, from the Armed Forces Retirement Home here in Gulfport, Mississippi. We are feeling pretty safe here right now, but unfortunately, because of the rain being so heavy, we may actually lose the signal before the worst of the winds getting through here. Really, we have not seen a lot of damage. I mean, for the most part, you can see how the wind's howling across the parking lot here. I mean, it looks like somebody's out here with a big hose just spraying everything down, occasionally gusting 50 miles an hour. That is probably a stronger gust right there. No doubt about it. The trees are holding out pretty good. These water oaks can take quite a beating and still be standing, but I can still stand out here in this parking lot without too much problem. But the problem is the rain is coming down so heavily, we may lose our signal this morning. So we wanted to give you an update. Again, power on and off from time to time. No word as to how high the water is at this point. We're going to try and get down there a little bit later on. We are only a half mile from the beach, but we are 27 feet up, so we're feeling out of the way of any potential surge to surround us here. But, you know, it's amazing. I mean, when you see this rain just whip across this parking lot like this, look over at a couple of cars and you see them occasionally shaking, you know that you've got a powerful hurricane on its way. The bad news is, all right, and don't miss this, is we haven't even gotten into a fraction of this thing yet. And believe me, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. We still have a 150-mile-an-hour hurricane out there, and the worst of it is yet to come. I'm Jim Cantori in Gulfport.
That was Jim Cantori, Gulfport, Mississippi, which is about 30 miles from New Orleans, and the center of the hurricane is 70 miles south-southeast of New Orleans. That's 100 miles away that he's getting hit with that kind of rain.
And let's find out more information about some of the areas surrounding here, how they're going to be impacted by this. Here's Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, when do you think that New Orleans will see the worst of this?
Well, right now it looks like about 2 or 3 hours. The northwestern eye wall of the circulation will make its closest approach to southeastern New Orleans. Right now it's making landfall near Port Sulphur, Louisiana, and the extreme southeastern portions there. You see the eye, and moving straight north. So we expect it to miss New Orleans to the east just slightly, but the western eye wall could catch southeastern portions of the city of New Orleans. Either way, they're going to have very strong winds, well over hurricane force. Power outages will be widespread. Down in here, signs down, significant damage to structures is probably occurring. It'll come up to the north and make a second landfall in Mississippi in somewhere around 4 hours or so, maybe a little beyond that, but approximately 4 hours there near Biloxi Gulfport, or just to the west of there. Now let's look at the radar, because that's going to tell us a couple of interesting things. First of all, you see the center there. There's the eye wall in there where the strongest winds are right there. That band is moving to the north. There's the city of New Orleans there, so it's going to pass to the east of New Orleans, and to Slidell as well. It's going to pass east of there. But here's Gulfport, Biloxi, and this right front quadrant is going to be sliding up there. Right now, we've already seen a surge there measured by NOAA buoy gauges of about 8 or 9 feet, and the circulation hasn't even gotten there. So we expect the water to rise there rather dramatically over the next 3 or 4 hours, with the peak probably approaching about 4 hours. In the meantime, very heavy rain occurring in southeastern Louisiana. We could see some flooding in the city of New Orleans briefly as the system goes by, with very high surge in Mississippi.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning here on Your Weather Today. I'm meteorologist Heather Tasher along with Marshall Cease.
Yes, we just have word of official landfall. Hurricane Katrina made landfall southern Plaquemine Parish, Louisiana, just south of Burris as a Category 4 hurricane. Max winds 140 miles to the hour to the east of the center.
And what you're looking at here is the French Quarter in New Orleans, where they are getting hit with some heavy rain. We do have some wind gusts in and around the New Orleans area, ranging from about 81 to 85 miles per hour. And you can see some of that, the most intense, dangerous winds here, the eye wall region around the hurricane.
And just north of the center circulation, where you see that shaded in the red, that's a tornado warning for 2 parishes, Plaquemine Parish and St. Bernard Parish in South Louisiana. The Hurricane Katrina eye wall moving on shore to the north is indicating winds over 100 miles per hour, and that is tornado force winds.
And Stephanie Abrams is live in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And Stephanie, you know, some folks might think you're far away from this, but what kind of impacts are you seeing?
Well, we're actually seeing tropical storm force gusts here in Fort Walton Beach, so this is a very big storm that's affecting a lot of us. And I wanted to show you these sand dunes that they've built up here along this hotel. And they did this after Ivan, because after Ivan, they had the Gulf and a whole lot of sand. They told me on the first floor the sand was piled up so high they had to bend over to be in those first floor rooms. So they built these dunes, and guess what? They are working, because earlier today we got some video of places where they don't have the sand dunes, and what's happening is this Gulf is washing right over their seawall, and we're actually already seeing a little bit of flooding on the roadway. So it is a good thing that we have these sand dunes in front of this hotel, and where we don't, that water is coming right up to those dunes. Now, we're not really prone to surge here in Fort Walton Beach, but there are some waves. As you can see behind me, the waves are really kicking up. And here's looking at what I was telling you about just moments ago, about how where there aren't dunes, that water is actually coming over the seawalls already, and we are seeing the flooding. So let's talk about the surge. Again, not really prone to it here in Fort Walton Beach, but those waves, as you can see, that Gulf, it's not what it looks like on an average day, that is for sure. Waves anywhere from 25 to 35 feet, and as you head over to Gulfport, about the same. And then of course in New Orleans, the big concern there is that surge. It could be right around 20 feet. And as this thing is making landfall, it's just going to continue to worsen for those folks along the Louisiana and Mississippi coast, and as you can see, it's not going to get much better as you head east and west.
Question is now, how's that going to affect folks in the Ohio River Valley and other folks over the next 5 days?
Well, you know, we can check it out here with our weekly planner, and you know, we've got a big mess to get through here. As we look into tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of rain pushing up here across areas of the Tennessee Valley, coming up into areas of the Ohio Valley, and with that you're going to find strong winds too, and we'll also be seeing some areas with some power outages working up across this region as all the moisture and the strong winds come up in this area. So as we look toward Tuesday, it's not going to be a real picnic here for those of you in the east. As we travel westward, it's going to be a much quieter day for us. We will see some, though, beneficial rain coming in across Montana. Idaho may see a little bit too. We could use the rain in this area. Very quiet though as we look into Wednesday across the west. But as we turn to the east coast, you're still going to find a lot of heavy rain. And again, this is going to be the remnants here of our hurricane, remnants of Katrina. And you can see it working here again across the Ohio Valley and really working into the northeast. Not quite as heavy though here as we get closer to the coastline. For some of you folks, say in New York or Philadelphia, you will see some potential showers, but you're not going to see the heavier rain that they will see in some of the interior regions. As we work into Thursday, you know, much of the country is actually going to be fairly quiet through here. You're going to find a few showers still lingering about across the northeast, but look at how things really settle down as we work into Friday. I guess we get a little bit of a break here from Mother Nature after all the rough weather that we are going to be experiencing here today and into the next couple of days. Let's talk numbers now. Here's Marshall with that.
It's going to be pretty nice in the Pacific Northwest with a surge of cooler air out ahead of which we have some warm conditions. And we'll be watching what's left of Katrina move through the Ohio River Valley and then northeastward. That'll keep those temperatures down. And then 60s and 70s in the Midwest return by Thursday. We'll find temperatures sticking around in the 80s for the mid-Atlantic states. We're back to the 90s along the Gulf Coast. The desert Southwest remains quite hot right through next weekend.
Well, we have some new video. This is just into the Weather Channel of Hurricane Katrina's effects on New Orleans. We're going to talk with hurricane hunter Nicole Mitchell, who flew into Katrina this weekend. That's all coming up next.
And your local on the 8s, of course, still coming to it as well.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
I'm Jeff Morrow in Covington, Louisiana, just north of Lake Pontchartrain near Interstate 12. Winds have been picking up here all morning long, starting to get some tree limbs snapping and a lot of power flashes out there. The power is out. We'll have a live report and tell you how bad we think it's going to get.
And Jeff here in Mobile County, another tornado warning was just issued until 6:45. We'll have the latest and check Sky Tracker next.
It's half past the hour as we continue our special storm alert coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Heather Tesh.
It has made landfall. We're going to take you for some new video footage that we have from New Orleans. You can see here the rain pelting the area. This is Kenner, Louisiana. At Lakefront Airport, they're indicating winds gusting to 81 to 85 miles per hour. Sustained winds to almost 60 right now out of the north-northeast. And this hurricane is still well to the south of New Orleans.
Keep in mind, too, we do have tornado watches in Louisiana, South Mississippi, South Alabama. You can see the first landfall here, 6:10 a.m. Central Time.
That's just south of Burris, Louisiana. Winds are 140 miles per hour at the official landfall. Dr. Lyons says it should make a second landfall on the coast of Mississippi a little later this morning. Heather mentioned the tornado watches. We also have tornado warnings in Baldwin County and Mobile County in southwest Alabama.
Well, our team of meteorologists is fanned out across the Gulf Coast to cover the arrival of Katrina. Jeff Morrow is in Covington, Louisiana. Stephanie Abrams is in Fort Walton Beach, and Mike Seidel is in Mobile, Alabama. Meteorologist Stephanie Abrams, as we mentioned, is in Fort Walton Beach here. We're going to start, though, with Jeff, I believe. And Jeff, I know your power is out where you're located right now. Any signs of activity on the roads?
Not really. I think we saw one police cruiser that may have come by just kind of checking things out a little while ago. But really, I don't see anything. In fact, the lights are out just about everywhere now. There was a generator that was going on in one of the hotels across the street not too long ago, but I think that is even down now. It is starting to, dawn is breaking here, and we have a whole row of pine trees here. You can probably see some of them behind me. We're really kind of keeping an eye on that. The wind is coming from the other direction, so if these pine trees, which are a soft wood, if they snap, which they often do, hopefully the limbs will go flying the other direction into the field, but I'm kind of keeping a wary eye on that because we do expect the winds to get a lot stronger here. Right now, Louisiana getting hit pretty hard. It does look like this eye of this hurricane, as Dr. Steve has been mentioning, is probably going to pass by to our east. In fact, I think we can go to the sky tracker here. And again, we are definitely on the northwest side of it. The hurricane has made the turn to the just about the due north. It looks like the eye may go by just east of New Orleans. And of course, we're pretty much due north of New Orleans, so it'll probably move by just east of us as well. We'll be on the western side. That means northerly winds here, and also northerly winds on Lake Pontchartrain. I can't stress that enough. That lake's going to get blown around, and there is going to be some flooding. It's just a matter of how much and exactly where. The fact that the hurricane is weakening somewhat is good news, but again, this is still a very, very powerful and dangerous storm. Again, you have to forgive me if I keep glancing around. I don't want any debris to come and hit me unexpectedly here, but I think we're in a pretty good location here, and we should be able to broadcast pictures to you as long as possible, but for much of the evening. All right, let's go a little bit farther east now. I think we're going to go over to Mike Seidel. He's in Mobile, Alabama. Mike, I guess you're getting drenched there as well.
We are, Jeff, and we're getting some pretty significant wind gusts running in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range. We had a peak gust just below 60, and when the winds get up above about 50, you start to hear that howling between the buildings and down the roads, and that eerie feeling that you often associate with tropical weather, and also obviously nor'easters and big snowstorms and windy weather in the cold months of January and February. That tornado warning continues in Mobile County out around the Stockton area. Keep an eye out there until 6:45. So we've got almost continuous tornado warnings coming out for Baldwin and Mobile counties this morning as we start to get those feeder bands. And that is not a surprise at all. As Dr. Forbes mentioned yesterday, our severe weather expert, this is very typical with severe weather. We're going to have 8 to 10 inches of rain easily. So far, the power is on here. We've got our flashlights ready. I hope you do in this area, because no doubt a lot of us are going to be without power as the winds really pick up later on. Pictures early this morning before sunrise, and you can see the wind whipping around. We've had horizontal sheets of rain so far, and because of all the rain we've had overnight and a lot more expected, they've got a flash flood warning now until 8. That could be extended. We also have a flash flood watch continuing until Tuesday morning. Heather and Marshall, let's check that forecast real quick. Again, the hurricane conditions setting in the next few hours, continuing through late this afternoon and early this evening. Then by tomorrow, the rain will start to ease off, maybe a morning shower, certainly afternoon sunshine, and the winds will back around to the southwest tomorrow, but they'll be still kind of fresh and gusty, 25 to 30 miles an hour at times. There you go. I don't know if you can hear that wind howling, but boy, it is really starting to pick up here across southern Alabama.
All right, thanks, Mike. Glad the power's still there, and it may be inevitable that it goes out, but we hope it stays for a while.
Yeah, let's take a look at this landfall once again as Katrina made it onshore officially at 6:10 this morning Central Daylight Time. Its second landfall, if you remember, the first one was in Florida, could have a third later this morning on the coast of Mississippi. Dangerous winds around that eye wall, and these are some of the wind gusts being reported. Gulfport, 56 miles per hour. Biloxi, we're looking at 51 miles per hour. New Orleans, peak wind gusts so far of 85, and Grand Isle, 114.
We'll continue to watch this system as it works inland with its danger. You're going to find that we do have some tornado warnings right now. Baldwin County in southwest Alabama, as well as Mobile.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
Katrina coverage continues here on the Weather Channel, Hurricane Central.
Hurricane Katrina continues to pound this part of Louisiana. I'm Jeff Morrow, and I'll be reporting live here just north of Lake Pontchartrain in Covington. Again, sheets of rain coming in, some tree damage. We'll show you exactly what it looks like in a live report coming up.
And Jeff, hurricane force wind gusts now raking southern parts of Alabama. The coast is getting ripped by high surf and surge, and we're getting lashed by heavy rain. The power is now out.
Well, good morning and thanks for joining us here. You are watching our special storm alert coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Heather Tesh.
And I'm Marshall Seas. Well, it is now the center of circulation as we take you to Gulfport, Mississippi. 94 mile per hour sustained winds here, 100 mile per hour wind gusts. And its center of circulation places it about 40 miles southeast of New Orleans, 65 miles southwest of Biloxi, Mississippi.
We are also very concerned about tornadoes at this point, and we do have some tornado warnings that are in effect around this region. Now, along the eye wall, too, you're going to have winds here that are similar to tornadoes.
And that's why tornado warnings have gone into effect, not just for specific tornadoes, which are a likelihood at times today, but also because the eye wall itself is winds will be 100 to 125 miles per hour at St. Tammany, Hancock, and Harrison counties, St. Tammany Parish, of course, Long Beach and Gulfport, Mississippi, Harrison County, and also St. Tammany.
Our team of meteorologists is fanned out across the Gulf Coast to cover the arrival of Katrina.
Jeff Morrow is in Covington, Louisiana, storm tracker Jim Cantori in Gulfport, Mississippi, and Mike Seidel in Mobile, Alabama.
And Jeff, let's start with you. Are the winds picking up this hour?
Yeah, they are, Heather and Marshall. As a matter of fact, we're getting some pretty strong wind gusts here. Some of the strongest we've seen so far. That's already brought down some trees you can see here behind me. Some of these other smaller, they look like Bradford pear trees, will probably be toppled over. Also, we've got, if we can pan over here, we can see that we've got a lot of big pines here. We're going to have to watch out for some of those tree limbs snapping off. Again, behind me, you can see a little bit of the power of the wind kind of whipping everything sideways behind me. Let's show you, we were out a little bit earlier, we got some video. We'll show you what it looked like. Again, some of the bigger trees that have come down, and also pretty much how deserted the roadways are here. And that's really heartening to see that everybody is pretty much staying off the roads. Just the police, some emergency vehicles, occasionally you'll see those, but pretty much everything else is deserted. Everything else is buttoned down, and people have even evacuated out of this area. Of course, there are a lot of hotels right near where we are, because this is along Interstate 12. And a lot of people have actually evacuated out of the New Orleans area across Lake Pontchartrain, as we did, up to this area. So you got a lot of people hunkered down in their hotels. The power has been out all morning in this area. So hopefully they're doing okay. Oh, that's getting a little bit strong now as it's blowing me a little bit sideways here. Again, the eye of this hurricane appears to be passing by to our east. So that's why the winds are out of the north. They're blowing from north to south. Now that kind of a wind direction is going to blow against Lake Pontchartrain from the north. That will blow that water down toward New Orleans. And again, we're not done yet. Even though the eye is passing to the east of New Orleans, and that's actually a little bit of a better scenario, there's still going to be strong winds over Lake Pontchartrain, and there's still going to be some flooding. We just don't know how much it will be at this point. We'll keep you updated from here, Heather and Marshall, as long as we can keep broadcasting in these kinds of conditions. Back to you.
All right, and you know, we're just getting some interesting information here too coming in from New Orleans, where there are lampposts that are down, there's siding that is flying through the air here, and the western eye wall is just east of New Orleans. Right
over Metairie, which is just to the east of New Orleans, and not too far from where Jim Cantori is stationed in Gulfport, Louisiana.
And let's get the latest coming up here from you in Gulfport, Mississippi, right, Jim?
Yeah, that's where we are. We're hunkered down, satellites down, etc. as a result of the wind. You guys know, I mean, you know, before our maximum gust was 62 miles an hour. You just came out with that 94 sustained at the Gulfport EOC, which is right around the corner from us. 100-mile-an-hour gust. We just had 118-mile-an-hour gust at Pascagoula, which is off to my east. 118 miles an hour. We are under tornado warnings up and through here. And again, each one of these little pockets that rolls through with the core of the storm will produce and can produce tornadoes. You're not going to see them, but they can produce these excessive winds. They're going to bring down the winds. One of the biggest problems that we are having right now is with the surge. All right, water is coming up all over US 90 right now. Okay, it is all over US 90. So where I was staying the other day, guys, in the Quality Inn, which is south of US 90, it is water, and given the size of these waves that are coming in, I would not be surprised if the water was lapping up to the second floor of that hotel. So the room I was staying in is now completely underwater. Places like Treasure Bay, the Hooters, you know, any of the buildings that are south of I-90 on the water side are being absolutely crushed right now with the surge that's coming in. And that water is going to get at least 10 to possibly 15 feet higher than it is right now. So we have the surge coming in as we speak. Winds, again, 90 to 100 miles an hour in gusts. 118 is the biggest one we have so far in Pascagoula off to my east. What does that mean? That's a Category 2 wind, so we're talking about extensive tree damage. We're talking about damage to some homes. Perhaps even entire roof structures may be undermined as a result of that kind of wind. So it's getting bad here, no question about it. And as long as we can talk to you, we will. We're safe. We're in a safe spot. Cruise inside, and we will take pictures if we can, and certainly feed them back to you when we can get our satellite dish on up. Right now, we're going to protect the crew and just kind of hunker down and give you these phone reports as long as we can. Thank you. Back to you.
All right, quickly, I want to make an observation here to put this in perspective for you. Jim Cantore said those winds at Category 2 on a Hurricane Saver-Simpson scale, but it also equates to an F2 tornado, which begins at about 113 miles per hour.
We also want to talk to Mike Seidel, and he is in Mobile, Alabama, also feeling the brunt of this system. Mike, we've been seeing the conditions going downhill in many locations. What's it like right now in Mobile?
Well, right now we're getting wind gusts up around 70 miles an hour. That's been our peak so far. And as you can see, the horizontal rain blowing across I-65. Hardly anybody is out this morning, which is the way it should be. Everybody should be inside and away from the windows. We've had some small debris blowing by. It's not as bad as where Jeff is and where Jim is, because their winds aren't as strong as they've seen so far. But we're going to have higher gusts. Well, we should get a gust over 100 miles an hour, because we've got another 4, 5, 6 hours as we get into the meat of the eastern side, which is the worst side of the storm. The wind has taken down power lines and trees, and our power here at the hotel has just gone out in the past 30 minutes. So far at the airport here in Mobile, just about 7 miles away, we've had 2 1/4 inches of rain. We're expecting 5 to 8 inches of rain here. And unlike what we saw in South Florida with a 15 to 20 inches of rain, we don't expect that here, because the storm is moving at twice the speed. Remember when Katrina made landfall in southeast Florida, Miami-Dade County and Broward County back last week, it was only moving at 5 or 6 miles an hour. Now it's more than doubled that speed. So we're in better shape from a rainfall perspective. But again, a lot of wind and rain, and the tornado threat continues right on through this afternoon. Heather and Marshall, back to you from Mobile.
All right, I want to put this again to tell you where the center of circulation is. The western eye wall just here at just about Chalmette. I would put it right over Chalmette, south of New Orleans.
And we want to mention, too, that, you know, with all the damage that's going on, there's going to be a lot of problems like this happening in Covington. Right now, there is a home on fire. It's an electrical fire, but crews cannot respond to this fire because the winds are too strong. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of situations like this where things are just going to get out of control.
Now, this is now a 30-mile wide eye, 923 millibars. Winds are still 135 miles per hour around the center of circulation of Hurricane Katrina, moving north at 15 miles per hour.
New Orleans really feeling the brunt of the system now. Very dangerous, as we have items that are flying through the air across the region. And here's some new video right now from Gulfport. You can see the flooding of Highway 90.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.
You know, we just got Highway 98 open a month ago from the last storm, Dennis, and we've had to close it down this morning because the water breached both lanes. We're hoping that with the tide going out that we'll be able to save Highway 98 today.
That was the sheriff in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. This area was battered with strong winds, intense wave action this morning. Highway 98 and other roads are impassable in the area. People are being urged to use common sense and stay inside where it's safe. You don't want to be outside in conditions like this. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back. I'm Marshall Cease.
And I'm Heather Tash. Our storm alert coverage continues of Hurricane Katrina. Very serious conditions happening now in the New Orleans area, which is getting the brunt of it. A lot of people are in the Superdome right now. That's where they are taking shelter. But a big piece of the roof there has actually turned off or been torn off.
Yep, they thought there was a leak there, but a piece has broken off. No injuries from that. Electricity also off for the air conditioning, but the generator's keeping the electricity going. Now, from Louisiana to Florida, coastal residents are bracing for Katrina. ABC's Darren Lynn is in Mobile, Alabama, and he joins us now. Darren, what effects are you seeing now from the storm?
Marshall, we are seeing some very heavy winds here. We're talking 40 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts even higher. The rains, though, we are told anywhere between 10 to 15 inches of rain are expected here Add that to storm surges that are expected to be between 10 and 15 feet, and emergency management officials here in Mobile, Alabama expect flooding throughout the entire downtown region. We are actually about 4 miles north of Mobile Bay. We actually moved from that location because we were worried that our vehicles were going to get trapped from that flooding. So we'll just have to see when the storm passes through if indeed that did happen down in Mobile Bay.
All right, that was Darren Lynn reporting from Mobile as Katrina bears down toward Biloxi, Mississippi. And now we want to take it over to Dr. Steve Lyons.
And Steve, I know you've been watching this situation. Who's getting hit the hardest right now?
Well, the western eye wall is very close to New Orleans. It's actually in the southeastern portions of New Orleans where we're seeing wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. And some of those areas are getting very close to the downtown area. If you live in a high-rise building or work in one and you're in one, go to a lower section of the floor, not all the way down to the bottom, but the winds are much higher in the higher portions of the building. And it's quite possible some of the windows could blow out of those high-rise buildings or apartments or hotel rooms. In the meantime, the right front quadrant is coming into Mississippi, and the strongest winds we think are going to be over there in that area. Also up in Slidell, you're getting the edge of the northwestern quadrant of the circulation as well. So let's zoom in on the radar imagery. Here you see the circulation. There's the eye wall, very close to downtown New Orleans and approaching Slidell as well. But the real powerful portion is right in there. That big batch there is going onshore near Waveland and past Christiane, Mississippi in about a half hour. And we think that's probably going to have the strongest wind in it of all. In association with that, that's where we think the surge is going to be the highest. We're not sure whether or not the winds that are starting to come around out of the north and northwest over Lake Pontchartrain are going to be strong enough to push any water over the levee system. It's just impossible to tell right now. But we think the highest surge will be in coastal Mississippi over the next 2 to 3 hours. Take shelter and stay away from the coast. Heather, Marshall.
All right, thanks, Steve. Now, the favorite road of folks going to the casinos is underwater.
That's right. We're talking about Highway 90 here, and this is in Gulfport, Mississippi. You can see the water covering the road here. We're going to see more problems like this throughout the morning. We're also going to take you to Stephanie Abrams, and she is in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. She'll have the latest on that area. Even though it's far away from the eye, it is getting hit hard.
Katrina 2065, Thursday night at 8 on the Weather Channel. Brought to you by Citgo. Learn about Citgo Coastal Restoration at CitgoCaringForOurCoast.com.